Chapter 12. Generally speaking, Li Tianlan was very satisfied with his two roommates. Li Baidian was always joking around. He could get along with anyone quickly without the slightest arrogance or reserve. Such a person was undoubtedly the easiest to get along with. Enchanting, the major of the Border Control Corps who was described by Li Baidian as a pretentious habitual criminal, was a little arrogant, but his personal cultivation was very good and he was not a bad person. Sharing a room with such a roommate was a very comfortable thing. Before this, Li Tianlan was really worried that the Sky Academy would send him two arrogant playboys with strong backers. If so, he would have a headache. Even if he wanted to dominate the world and make the Li family return to the peak of Zhongzhou state, it did not mean that he wanted to dominate the Sky Academy. He just wanted the most precious graduation place. As for other times, Li Tianlan would rather keep a low profile and quietly earn credits. Even if he could not keep a low profile, it was also good to be kind to others and accumulate more connections. If the Sky Academy really sent him two arrogant playboys, the dormitory would be in chaos all day long. Li Tianlan could not keep a low profile even if he wanted to. Li Baidian and Enchanting coming over was exactly what he wanted. Lunch was Li Baidian's treat. The three of them found a nice restaurant. Li Baidian pulled a pretty girl from his mobile phone's contact list. She was also a freshman of the Sky Academy. Her surname was Yi, and her name was Huayu. It was a very unique name. Yi Huayu's way of addressing Li Baidian was also shocking. She kept calling him young martial uncle with an extremely respectful manner. This made Li Tianlan even more certain that the dormitory building he lived in was extraordinary. Of his two roommates, one was a young talent favored by the commander of the Border Control Corps, and the other was some martial uncle. Their backgrounds were certainly not simple. Obviously, except for himself, those who could live in that dormitory building all had a powerful background. After lunch, Li Baidian put on the airs of a senior and righteously said that he wanted to visit his martial nephew Yi Huayu's dormitory. Enchanting said that he wanted to visit some of his comrades. Li Tianlan returned to the dormitory alone, shut himself in his room, and began to meditate. The so-called meditation had many names, such as dhyana, vipassana, mindfulness, and meditation. The names were different, but the effects were exactly the same. The highest realm of meditation was to forget oneself and pursue absolute concentration. In martial arts, the importance of meditation was no less than the importance of increasing one's strength and speed. In fact, it might even be more important. The more powerful one was, the more they valued meditation. It was no exaggeration to say that meditation was a part of martial arts. Moreover, it was the core and the most important part. To freeze ice with a wave of one's hand, to ignite fire with a raise of one's hand, to snap thunder with a flick of one's finger. To achieve all of these, one's strength and speed had to reach a certain level, but at the same time, one needed to have an absolutely focused will. If one's will couldn't be focused, how could one explode with the strongest destructive power and combat strength with just strength alone? Both willpower and strength had their limits. Some people were stuck in the ice-condensing realm all their lives and could not enter the fire-flaming realm. It might be because their strength did not meet the requirements, or their willpower could not be concentrated enough. In martial arts, without concentrated willpower, it was impossible to enter the ice-condensing realm or the fire-flaming realm, let alone the mysterious invincible realm. A day passed quickly in meditation. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Li Tianlan opened his eyes and moved his body. Then, he lay on the bed and listened to the sound of waves beating on the shore outside the window, quietly waiting for dawn. A few hours later, the school officially started. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Li Tianlan, who had slept for less than 3 hours, was awakened by a knock on the door. Enchanting's calm and somewhat arrogant voice sounded outside the door. "Tianlan, it's time to assemble. Get ready." Li Tianlan looked at the time and agreed. He put on his camouflage uniform, hurriedly washed his face in the bathroom provided in the bedroom, and then walked out of the room. At 6:40, all the freshmen of the Sky Academy had to assemble in the entrance square not far from the dormitory area, and then participate in the first entrance maneuver of the Sky Academy. The first one to pass the maneuver would be rewarded with 80 credits. This was written in the student code of the Sky Academy, and Li Tianlan naturally would not forget it. Where's Tianlan? Zhuoqing, wake Tianlan up quickly. It's time to assemble. Li Tianlan poured a glass of water in the living room. As soon as he took a sip, Li Baitian's hurried voice sounded from the porch. With the sound of the door closing, Li Baitian's figure directly appeared in the living room. You didn't come back last night? Li Tianlan and Ning Qianxing asked in unison. The freshman girls of the Sky Academy are too enthusiastic. I fought all night, how could I have time to come back? Li Baitian chuckled. His skinny face, which was no less than a skeleton, had an expression of reminiscence and indescribable wretchedness. Skinny, who the hell are you? The girls of the Sky Academy are all proud and arrogant. Which one of them is ignorant? It's not easy for you to sleep with them whenever you want to. Ning Ziyuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Baitian with a playful expression. Of course they fell in love with my handsomeness. It's human nature for men and women to love each other. Li Baitian tidied up the empty clothes on his body and said with a proud expression. Bullshit. Handsomeness and handsomeness? Those women might as well find a cucumber. Ning Qianxing's face was full of sarcasm. How can a cucumber be compared to me? I'm a cannon, okay? I shot to fame. How can a cold cucumber be compared to my cannon? Shot to fame? Cannon? I think you hit the nail on the head. Look at you, you're like a bamboo pole. How can you be compared to a cannon? Needles are more like embroidery needles. Pretentious Cheng. I'll fight you to the death. Li Tianlan rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He smiled bitterly and said, Oh, okay, there's no time for you to fight. It's time to go. Li Baitian and Ning Qianxing snorted at the same time. The former wrapped his skinny hand around Li Tianlan and scolded him indirectly. Tianlan, you have to listen to me. It's not enough for a man to just be pretentious. Yesterday, I inspected the girls' dormitory and found that the quality of the girls this year is quite good. Come with me another day and I'll introduce you to a few. I guarantee you'll be comfortable. Ning Qianxing clenched his teeth and glared at Li Baitian without saying a word. Li Tianlan shook his head and said casually, Mediocre. I'm not interested. As he said this, the dreamy figure that was now in Bruxelles appeared in his mind again. What was that woman, who seemed real and illusory at the same time, doing now? Li Baitian wanted to say more, but Ning Qianxing said impatiently, Are you going or not? It'll be too late if you don't leave now. Do you think the school bus will wait for you? Go, go, go. Li Baitian laughed. The three of them went out together, got on the school bus and went straight to the entrance square. At this time, the open square was already densely packed with countless freshmen, all dressed in camouflage uniforms, lined up in a very neat phalanx on the square. Li Tianlan and his two roommates arrived at the square at the same time and stood at the back of the crowd. Right in front of the square was an exquisite rostrum. At this time, a row of tables and chairs had been placed on the 3-meter-high rostrum. Several school leaders were already in place. They sat in their seats and chatted casually with their colleagues. Tianlan, do you see that? The one sitting in the middle is the headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang. He's one of the top 10 experts in Zhongzhou State. Standing beside Li Tianlan, Li Baitian quickly pointed at the rostrum and took the initiative to introduce him. Li Tianlan nodded and glanced at the rostrum with a calm expression. Zhuang Huayang was close to 70 years of age, but he looked unusually young, like a middle-aged man less than 50 years old. He had a gentle and elegant temperament, like a senior scholar, and did not look like a master at all. Top 10 experts in Zhongzhou State? Li Tianlan was lost in thought. Our marshal is also one of the top 10 experts, and his ranking is one place higher than that of Headmaster Zhuang. Ning Qianxing stood on Li Tianlan's right and said with a cold face. Li Baitian seemed to dislike Ning Qianxing and said mercilessly, Why don't you say 10 years ago? 10 years ago, your marshal was not on the list. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. Ning Qianxing snorted. Li Baitian shook his head and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. Ignore this pretentious guy. Look at the old lady in red on the left of the headmaster. She's the director of teaching of the Sky Academy, Gu Yunxia. People call her the old witch in Jianghu. She has a strong background and is a ruthless person. Don't offend her. Li Tianlan nodded again. The beauty on the right of the headmaster is the headmaster's granddaughter. She takes her mother's surname and is called Qin Ku. She's the deputy director of teaching and also a famous top genius in Zhongzhou State. She's one of the youngest thundershocking realm experts. Isn't she fierce? Mediocre. Li Tianlan looked disdainful. Li Beidian was silent for a while and then glared at Ning Chenqing. Then he turned his head and said seriously, "Stay away from pretentious town in the future. Look, it's only been a day and you're already pretentious." Ahem. A clear cough suddenly sounded from the rostrum in front of them. There was no sound or microphone. The seemingly casual cough came clearly from the air and vibrated in all directions, as if it was ringing in everyone's ears. All the freshmen under the rostrum suddenly stopped talking. An old lady dressed in red had left her seat and was standing on the rostrum at some point in time. She was about 50 years old and had a short stature. However, her entire body exuded a sharp and fierce aura. Her figure was ordinary and even a little shriveled. Her face also had some natural wrinkles from the passage of time. She stood on the rostrum and glanced around with a cold gaze. Everyone immediately straightened their bodies subconsciously. "Hello, students. I'm Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching of the Sky Academy." Gu Yunxia seemed to be very satisfied with the reaction of the freshmen under the rostrum. She raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a smile. But because of her appearance, her smile looked unusually mean and bitter. Li Tianlan quietly looked at Gu Yunxia, who was being carried up. From the first time he saw her, he disliked the director of teaching of the Sky Academy. It was not because of her ugly appearance and skinny figure, but because of an inexplicable feeling. Li Tianlan always felt that Director Gu was too cold, like a poisonous snake, and was not a kind person. Now when he saw her somewhat twisted smile, he felt even more disgusted in his heart. "First of all, welcome to the Sky Academy. I hope that from the first day you enter the school, you can take this place as your pride and glory." On the rostrum, Gu Yunxia's voice spread to the whole audience and could be heard clearly. The Sky Academy is the earliest special warfare academy in Zhongzhou State and the most legendary special warfare academy in Zhongzhou State. Over the past decades, the Sky Academy has produced hundreds of generals, countless senior agents, and several giants of the dark world. The glory of this special warfare academy may not be known to all, but its influence is everywhere. It has the power to influence the pattern of the Imperial Special Warfare System and the ability to change the fate of every freshman. Gu Yunxia paused and her smile faded. She continued, "I can't know all of you, but I know where you come from. Some of you come from the military, some are the elites of the Special Warfare System, and some are the inheritors of various sects among the people. There are iron-blooded soldiers, excellent agents, children of generals, and commoners. But I can tell you for sure that no matter where you come from, you will gain something when you come to the Sky Academy. Every teacher of the Sky Academy is willing to do their best to help you and make you the backbone of the Imperial Special Warfare System. Here is the best growing environment and the cruelest competitive atmosphere. From today on, in the next 3 years, you will constantly encounter the test of blood, pain, and even death. The Sky Academy is a place of the strong, not a place for the weak to survive. So, please remember the motto of the Sky Academy: go forward with indomitable will. Tell me, are you afraid of death?" After a short silence, a tsunami of voices suddenly broke out on the entrance square, neat and uniform, shaking the sky. "Go forward with indomitable will." Everyone tried their best to roar these 4 words. Everyone's face was red and their blood was boiling. It was not because of Gu Yunxia's admonition, but because of the motto of the Sky Academy. It was because of these 4 words, "Go forward with indomitable will." These 4 words were the true portrayal of the Sky Academy for decades. Countless thrilling stories and countless legends who turned the tide added innumerable glory to the Special Warfare Academy. Some people roared and went forward with indomitable will to die. Some people laughed wildly and fought to the death without retreating. Some people silently went forward with indomitable will to protect. The history of the Sky Academy's development was paved with the blood and flesh of heroes, so it was glorious and radiant. Very good. On the rostrum, Gu Yunxia nodded and said with a smile, I'm willing to go with you all the way. I hope you all become the pillars of the country, the pride of the Sky Academy and the entire Zhongzhou State Special Warfare System, not a shame. The audience was quiet again. Only Gu Yunxia's excited and shrill voice echoed in the square. The Sky Academy has been established for decades and has countless honors, but there is only one shame. Here, I want to mention a name that disgusts me and everyone. Behind Gu Yunxia, the other school leaders' expressions changed obviously. Headmaster Zhuang Huang also lowered his eyes. His name is Li Kuangtu. Gu Yunxia looked around and her tone became sharper and harsher. The shame of Zhongzhou State, the shame of the Sky Academy. Perhaps many students have heard of the name of this traitor. He used to be the most dazzling genius of Zhongzhou State and entered the invincible realm at the age of 35. But when everyone was optimistic about him, this damn traitor chose to betray. He colluded with the Night Spirit organization and betrayed Zhongzhou State, which directly led to the annihilation of the 120,000 most elite troops of Zhongzhou State. Such a scum, it's simply intolerable that he doesn't die. And this bastard who betrayed Zhongzhou State is a graduate of the Sky Academy. He shamed the whole academy and made everyone feel disgusted. Even if he dies, he can't atone for his sins. This kind of trash that even wild dogs don't want to look at has covered nearly half of the glory of the Sky Academy. He died miserably, but he deserved it. But his disgusting and shameless behavior should be engraved on the pillar of shame of the Sky Academy forever to warn all the latecomers. Because of such a bastard, our Sky Academy has been unable to lift our heads for many years. Bastard, scum, trash, bastard. At the opening ceremony of the Sky Academy, the appearance of these words was simply unbearable to look at. But almost all the freshmen ignored Gu Yunxia's words, and the crowd was agitated. Damn Li Kuangtu. No, it's too easy for him to die. The 120,000 troops were annihilated. Is it enough for him to die? The national strength of Zhongzhou State has declined in recent years because there are too many such bastards. Li Kuangtu, I wish you can't rest in peace after your death. May your whole family die, damn it. It seemed that every corner of the square was echoing with curses. Gu Yunxia stood on the rostrum, squinting, but there was a trace of cold mockery in the depths of her eyes. In the whole square, perhaps only Li Tianlan's behavior was different from others. Others were either silent or cursing, but Li Tianlan was laughing. He was laughing silently, but the corners of his mouth were curling up. His body was trembling, and so was the corner of his mouth. Everyone could see how humiliated and indignant he was under his smile. But he was still laughing, laughing with all his strength. No one knew that it was Li Kuangtu who was being cursed by everyone. The traitor who had been dead for many years. It was his father. A trace of red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and took a deep look at Gu Yunxia on the rostrum. He silently lowered his head and wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth. However, in his heart, there was a clear voice rumbling incessantly agitated. Wait and see. Chapter 13. Li Beidian was the first to notice Li Tianlan's abnormality. Recovering from his thoughts, he turned his head and subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan, just in time to see Li Tianlan lowering his head and wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. Li Beidian was shocked and frowned. He asked in a deep voice, Tianlan, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Although he didn't know Li Tianlan's specific origin, he knew the origin of most of the freshmen here. The atmosphere of competition inside the Sky Academy was fierce, but it was also not easy to get a place to study here. The freshmen sent by the military, the Special Warfare Group, the Secret Service Agency, and the martial arts sect were all selected after many rounds of selection. Many selections were fought from the beginning to the end, and the winner was king. Some people obviously won the final victory, but because they were too seriously injured, they missed the entrance time of the Sky Academy. These people were undoubtedly the unluckiest. There were also some people who could barely get up, but they came to the Sky Academy with serious injuries. These people were not very lucky, because the first day of registration was the beginning of the first maneuver. How good could they get with serious injuries? One step behind could lead to the situation of falling behind step by step. If Li Tianlan was in such a situation, it was simply terrible. It's a small problem. It doesn't matter. Li Tianlan rubbed the corner of his mouth hard, suppressed all the negative emotions in his heart, and tightly pursed his lips with a smile. Of course, his injury did not come from the internal competition, but from the fight with Qin Ku on the first day of the school. In the following days he had stabilized his injury, but because of the agitation just now, the serious injury showed signs of relapse. Thinking, Li Tianlan subconsciously glanced at the rostrum again. This time he looked at Qin Ku. But to his surprise, Qin Ku was also looking at him. Their eyes met in the air. Li Tianlan's expression was calm. Qin Ku frowned slightly and her eyes were cold. Li Tianlan smiled at the rostrum, then withdrew his gaze and said slowly, "Don't worry, I will definitely get a good ranking. You two also have to work hard." "I see." Li Beidian thought for a moment and said decisively, "When the maneuver starts, I'll be in front, Tianlan in the middle, and Braggart Cheng in the back. Tianlan, try to reduce your physical consumption. We'll rush to the top 10 together." In the Sky Academy, every student attached great importance to the ranking of any maneuver. The ranking was related to the number of credits and the treatment one would receive. It was something that was worth fighting for. The ranking of the first maneuver after entering the academy could determine their starting point in the academy, so it was extremely important. If they could make it to the top 10 in such a maneuver, they would definitely attract the close attention of the higher-ups of the academy. Top 10. Ning Qianqing raised his brows in surprise and looked at Li Beidian. "What? You don't have confidence? With your reputation as the city of acting tough, you have the nerve to say that you can't enter the top 10? Even if you want to show off, you should at least say that you can get into the top 3, right?" Li Beidian said with a provocative look. As expected, Ning Qianqing began to show off. He glared at Li Tianlan and snorted. "Of course I have confidence. I can take Tianlan to the top 10 without you. I'm worried about you. Look at your physique. You can push aside with a little force. Don't drag us down." Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of the scene when Li Beidian introduced Ning Qianqing to him when they first met. He automatically ignored the introduction of Ning Qianqing's skill in showing off. What impressed him most was that Li Beidian introduced Ning Qianqing as one of the top 10 experts of the young generation. The top 10 experts of the young generation might become the top 10 experts of Zhongzhou State many years later. Such a young talent was outstanding in both potential and strength. As long as he was not too unlucky, it was absolutely no problem for him to rush to the top 10. "Don't worry, as long as you don't drag us down. It's a deal. The three of us will act together and make it to the top 10 together." Li Beidian chuckled and patted his chest. His palms hit his bones through a layer of skin, making popping sounds. Neither Li Beidian nor Ning Qianqing seemed to leave the seriously injured Li Tianlan behind. They might not see eye to eye with each other, but between the lines, they both meant to take Li Tianlan to the top 10 together. It was impossible for Li Tianlan not to be touched. No matter how vigilant he was, he would not turn a blind eye to such obvious kindness. They were just roommates who had been together for a day. In the competitive atmosphere of the Sky Academy, the two of them were willing to take a burden like him with them. Their broad-mindedness alone was enough to make Li Tianlan look at them with new eyes. "Thank you, both of you." Li Tianlan looked at the two standing on his left and right and thanked them sincerely. Ning Qianqing snorted proudly. He raised his head and resumed his aloof look. Li Beidian laughed and waved his hand. "It's what I should do. In the next few years, we will be roommates who get along with each other day and night. Our relationship is even closer than that of biological brothers. In a place like this, we will have to go on missions together in the future. That is a real life and death commitment. How can we not share our hearts? Only fools without foresight would be stupid enough to compete with their roommates. You see, Drunkard Cheng is a wise man." In the military camp at the border, The feelings of living together are even deeper than here. If you are not willing to share your heart with your classmates who will be studying with you day and night, who else can you count on? No matter what, I still have to thank you. Li Tianlan's tone was sincere. If people respected him, he would respect them tenfold. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing were so loyal to him that he was willing to treat them sincerely. However, I think it's better for me to be at the front later. It's just a minor injury. It won't affect anything. In the process of competing with each other, the frontmost position would definitely face the most pressure. Once his human emperor was fully extended, it would be a spear more than 2 meters long. When he brandished the spear, he could better deal with the pressure coming from the front. His choice to be at the front showed that he was willing to trust Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing and even tried to trust his back to them. Tunan, what realm are you in now? Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian looked at each other and the former suddenly asked. What about you? Li Tianlan asked back. Realm was something that could not be faked, but his actual combat strength was far beyond his realm. He wanted to be at the front. He could not tell Ning Qianqing, one of the top 10 young experts, that he had not entered the 4 realms of martial arts, could he? I am at the peak of the ice-condensing realm and can enter the fire-flaming realm at any time. Ning Qianqing said slowly. The corner of Li Tianlan's eye twitched subconsciously. Ning Qianqing was 23 years old and about to enter the fire-flaming realm. With such strength, he was indeed worthy of being one of the top 10 young experts. I'm about the same as Drunkard Cheng. I shouldn't be much worse than him. Li Beidian also said with a calm and confident look on his face. Ning Qianqing was stunned for a moment. He took a deep look at Li Beidian and did not say anything. I'm about the same as you. I shouldn't be much worse than you. Li Tianlan said very modestly. His words were almost the same as Li Beidian's, with only a few words changed. The corner of Ning Qianqing's mouth twitched a few times. He felt a pain in the ass. Li Beidian was about the same, so was Li Tianlan. He was ranked 5th among the top 10 young experts. Was the title of the top 10 experts so worthless now? Ahem, everyone. On the rostrum, a gentle voice suddenly interrupted all the voices below the stage. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang, stood in front of Gu Yunxia with a kind expression. All the voices below the stage suddenly disappeared. Every freshman raised their head and looked up at the headmaster standing on the rostrum with reverence. After all, he was one of the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou State, who represented the top combat strength of their country. Such a status was much higher than that of Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching. What's your ranking among the top 10 contemporary experts? Li Tianlan tugged at Li Beidian's clothes and asked in a low voice. 7th. Li Beidian quickly said, the top 10 contemporary experts are ranked every 10 years. 10 years ago, the headmaster was originally ranked 5th. Over the years, he has been getting older and his state has declined a lot. Li Tianlan nodded with understanding. As time went by, the body would deteriorate. No matter how strong an expert was, his combat strength would continue to decline. This was the law of nature and could not be changed. A hero was past his prime, while a beauty had white hair. This was the most helpless thing. Everyone. On the rostrum, Zhuang Huayang stood straight. He glanced around and continued, I heard a lot of cursing, insulting, and even cursing the traitors on the stage. All of you are the future pillars of our country. I understand your hatred for the traitors. But I also want to remind you that cursing and cursing cannot show that you are very patriotic. No words can express our love for our country. Patriotism requires practical actions. Only voices without actions are nationalistic. Don't you think so? The audience became even more silent. Standing behind Zhuang Huayang, Gu Yunxia's face changed slightly. I've been the headmaster of the Sky Academy for nearly 20 years. I came here after the case of treason happened. Over the years, I've sent away many graduates of the Sky Academy one after another. I've seen them bring honor to the Sky Academy and the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. I've seen their blood and bodies fall on the road to the strength of our country. This is the pride of the Sky Academy and Zhongzhou State. Zhuang Huayang's voice was low and gentle, but with an unquestionable majesty. Yes, I admit that the treason case was indeed a stain on the Sky Academy, even a shame. But shame can't cover up our glory. The treason case has long been a thing of the past. What's the point of saying more? But the Sky Academy still has a future, a better future. Each of us should look forward, because you can't change the past, but you can shape a better future. You will become the backbone of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State in the future. Many of you may not be known, but the Sky Academy will remember you and remember any honor you bring to the Sky Academy. We hide in the dark and serve the light. I sincerely hope that each of you can go out from here and make the Sky Academy more brilliant because of you in the future, in the near or far future. The deafening applause sounded like thunder. Only Gu Yunxia's face was extremely ugly and she looked extremely embarrassed. Headmaster Zhuang didn't say much, but to a large extent he denied her extremely fierce speech just now, which was tantamount to a slap in the face. Under the stage, some people were also applauding thoughtfully. Just now, Director Gu and Headmaster Zhuang's speech was, to put it simply, a speech with a slightly different content. But to put it broadly, this might be the different opinions represented by the two big forces. In this way, many people who knew the pattern of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State suddenly smiled meaningfully. The special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, a great change was coming. Chapter 14. In the warm applause, Zhuang Huayang's expression remained unchanged. He pressed his hands down slightly and still smiled gently. He didn't seem to notice Gu Yunxia's embarrassed face behind him, nor did he notice the subtle and weird atmosphere on the rostrum. When the applause subsided, he continued, "Next is the time for the maneuver." His eyes wandered around the whole square and paused quietly in the last row. Then he said flatly, "I'd like to remind you again that the first maneuver after entering the school is very important. It may be related to your final achievements in the Sky Academy. So, please do your best and strive for the best ranking. I'll talk about the content of the maneuver." Zhuang Huayang pointed to the south and said, "There is a large maze less than 2 kilometers south of you. Through the maze, you will see a forest. Go all the way east from the forest. The teachers and I will wait for you by a pool on the edge of the forest. I will bring a school bus with 50 seats. The first 50 students to arrive will directly become my students. I will be responsible for each of my students until the next maneuver." There was an uproar. The huge sound wave swept the whole place in an instant. Although most of the freshmen had a general understanding of the content and results of the first entrance maneuver, there was still a great sensation among the freshmen when they heard what Zhuang Huayang said. The first 50 students to arrive would become Zhuang Huayang's students. This basically meant that the classes of other schools would be assigned. The first 50 students would be the classes led by the headmaster, Zhuang Huayang. These 50 students might not necessarily have the greatest achievements in the future, but they could be said to be the most outstanding 50 students among the freshmen at this stage. These people were either powerful, intelligent, or extremely lucky. Everyone had their redeeming qualities. And it was certain that a large part of the perfect graduates 3 years later would come from the classes led by Zhuang Huayang. The Sky Academy held an internal maneuver every 3 months, and Zhuang Huayang's class would always be fixed at a round number of 50 students. In each maneuver, he would only choose the top 50 students. If the students in the top 50 this time fell behind in the next maneuver, they would also lose the qualification to be taught by Zhuang Huayang and would be transferred to other classes. However, it was undeniable that if they entered Zhuang Huayang's class from the first entrance maneuver, they would definitely have a lot more advantages than those in other classes. As one of the top 10 experts in Zhongzhou State, Zhuang Huayang's teaching was more valuable than that of other classes. Moreover, the other teachers in charge of this class were also the best teachers in the Sky Academy. It was no exaggeration to say that this class of 50 people would be the core group of the entire Sky Academy. Although the internal maneuver of the Sky Academy once every 3 months gave other classes a chance to rush into the core class, the longer the time, the greater the advantage of the members of the core class, and the smaller the chance for students from other classes to rush in. If they could rush in at the beginning, no one would be willing to fall behind. The sounds of discussion grew louder and louder, and the eyes of every new student became incomparably fiery. Zhuang Huayang's voice still came from the rostrum and spread throughout the audience. The next 5 hours will be a drill. After 5 hours, the drill will be over. If you don't arrive at the designated place, 50 credits will be deducted. The first to arrive at the designated place will be rewarded with 80 credits. The second to the 10th place will be rewarded with 50 credits. The 11th to the 50th place will be rewarded with 30 credits. There will be no reward or penalty for those who are ranked below the 50th place. Students can form teams spontaneously, but the number of people cannot exceed 10. After entering the maze, you will not get any supplies, but you can move freely, obstruct, and attack other students except yourself. The Sky Academy has only one requirement, that is, no killing is allowed in the entrance maneuver. Do you understand? Yes. The response of the freshmen below the rostrum was still loud, but this time, everyone's expression was different. Damn it, this old guy is really ruthless. He only said that no killing is allowed, so is it not against the rules to cut off the other's arms and legs? Li Beidian touched his nose and muttered to himself in the last row of freshmen. Li Tunlan smiled and his eyes were thoughtful. He had to admit that there was a lot of information in Zhuang Huayang's words. Not to mention the vagueness of the only requirement that Li Beidian complained about, nor the temptation of the core class and the credit reward, just the sentence that they could move freely, obstruct, and attack other students except themselves was enough to make people vigilant. Zhuang Huayang was telling them clearly that in the cruel competition, no one but themselves was worthy of trust. Sinister. Ning Qianqing took a deep breath and said coldly, "This is clearly to make us kill each other and be on guard against each other. In this kind of environment, no matter how brilliant the elites cultivated are, they are still loners who dare not trust their companions and don't understand teamwork. Even if they can play a certain role after graduation, it will be extremely limited. But similarly, a team that can trust each other in this kind of environment is the most tacit and reliable team," Li Tianlan said with a smile. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the expressions of Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian. His eyes were deep and bottomless. "Are you two still willing to go together?" "Of course, I'll go with you." Ning Qianqing did not even think and spoke without hesitation. "Me too," Li Beidian said with a smile. "With our strength, we will definitely fight for the top 10. "Then let's go?" Li Tianlan said with a smile. When he was very young, Li Honghe had told him that people should not be easily trusted, but they should also be trusted. For people in the dark world, it took a lot of courage to trust others. 70% boldness and 30% cautiousness. Li Tianlan had always been extremely cautious. But now, facing Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing, he had a very strong intuition that as long as he could really trust them, they would never let him down. Li Beidian nodded and raised his eyes to glance at the rostrum. He found that Zhuang Huayang, who was standing on the rostrum just now, had disappeared. Not only Zhuang Huayang, but Gu Yunxia, Qin Ku, and some leaders on the rostrum had also disappeared. Obviously, the maneuver had entered the countdown stage before anyone officially announced the start of the maneuver. "A bunch of bastards." Li Beidian cursed angrily, "Let's go, let's go." The square formation of freshmen on the square began to disperse, but the whole group was always moving south. Li Tianlan and the other two, who were originally standing in the last row, became the front row of the square formation. In the crowd less than 10 meters behind Li Tianlan, separated by several rows of students, a pair of extremely dazzling girls were walking forward unhurriedly. A fragrant wind floated around them. No matter how hurried the freshmen who walked past them were, they would subconsciously take a few more glances when passing by them. They were a pair of girls about 18 or 19 years old. They looked light and exquisite, but their temperament was completely opposite. The girl on the right had delicate features. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she was extremely elegant and refined. She had the gentleness and cleverness of a pretty daughter from a humble family. She blinked her eyes and curiously sized up the crowd around her. Her eyes were clear and bright. "Sister Yuetong, let's hurry up." The beautiful girl took her companion's arm and said in a clear voice, "In this kind of maneuver, the faster we walk, the earlier we can arrive." "Qingyan, Do you know the maze ahead? I heard that Senior Yu and Headmaster Zhuang are very close. Did Senior Yu tell you anything specifically? The girl who was called Sister Yuetong asked with a smile. Even in the most critical eyes, the girl named Yuetong was an almost perfect stunner, or rather, a monster. She was undoubtedly beautiful to the extreme. This kind of beauty was ostentatious and presumptuous, with an extremely strong aggressiveness. Every casual move of hers was able to firmly grab everyone's attention. Her temperament was very pure, but there was a very faint but not negligible enchanting charm in it. She walked forward unhurriedly, like an elf, but more like a goblin. Imperceptibly, she seemed to have become the center of the nearby world. At this moment, the smile on her perfect face was light. Not to mention the other students nearby, even Yu Qingyan, who was a woman, was a little dazzled. Sister Yuetong, you are so beautiful. Yu Qingyan grasped Wang Yuetong's arm and subconsciously praised. Little flatterer, don't change the subject. Wang Yuetong pursed her lips and smiled. She patted Yu Qingyan's head and became more lively. No, I didn't. Yu Qingyan shook her head honestly and said quietly, Grandpa didn't say much to me. He said that I should observe more and learn more. She paused and didn't go on. In fact, Yu Donglai also told her to contact Brother Li more in the future. But this sentence had nothing to do with the maze in front of them. Wang Yuetong's eyes were sparkling, and she became more enchanting and even enchanting. She said, then you should observe carefully. Do you think this maneuver is very simple? Look, the more you walk in the front and enter the maze first, the worse the result is likely to be. So don't worry, it's best for us to enter the maze at the end. Yu Qingyan looked at Wang Yuetong blankly and adorably. Wang Yuetong smiled without saying a word and continued to move forward. Her beautiful eyes casually glanced at the group of people walking in the front, who might also be the most unlucky. A figure as thin as a bamboo pole suddenly came into Wang Yuetong's eyes. Wang Yuetong froze for a moment and looked at it very seriously. Then she looked at the people beside the bamboo pole. In her sight, the three people seemed to be walking in the front of the crowd. The bamboo pole stood on the left, and another familiar figure stood on the right. Between the two, a figure who didn't look outstanding and tall walked slowly and firmly. It's Brother Li. Yu Qingyan looked in the direction of Wang Yuetong and suddenly smiled in surprise. Brother Li? Do you know him? Wang Yuetong remained calm and chuckled. Yes, Brother Li. Grandpa asked me to keep in touch with him. Sister Yuetong, do you know him too? Yu Qingyan nodded and said innocently. I don't know him, but I know the two people beside him. Brother Li doesn't look simple since he can make 2 of the top 10 experts of the young generation walk willingly on his left and right sides. Wang Yuetong's smile became more and more obvious, and 2 clear dimples appeared on her cheeks. She was as beautiful as the most beautiful scenery in the Sky Academy. Let's go and have a look. Wang Yuetong pulled Yu Qingyan's hand and quickened her pace. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Li Baitian's exaggerated laughter sounded in her ears, sounding extremely heroic. Who dares to stop me? I'll cut off his head with my sword. Tilan, what weapon do you use? Unarmed? Or you don't have a suitable weapon? I'll give you one. Don't stand on ceremony. Tell me, what do you like? Pretentious Qing uses a sword. I also use a sword. Why don't you use a sword too? 3 swordsmen, aren't they fierce? 3B asterisk cheese, aren't they even fiercer? Ha! Wang Yuetong's expression was strange. Yu Qingyan looked at the bamboo pole in front of her with some astonishment. Li Tianlan's gentle and indifferent voice sounded in front of her. I have my own weapon. What weapon? Show me. Li Baitian asked casually, don't hide it. Anyway, you'll show it later. Show me your weapon. The corner of Wang Yuetong's beautiful mouth twitched, and she subconsciously gritted her teeth. I'm not hiding it. I just put it away so that I can carry it, Li Tianlan said with a smile. He shook his arm, and a silver metal pole appeared directly in his hand. Under Wang Yuetong's curious gaze, Li Tianlan waved one hand. There seemed to be wind and thunder roaring in the air. The metal pole, which was perfectly grasped by one hand, suddenly stretched out, pierced the air in front of it, and turned into a silver spear more than 2 meters long. The sharp blades on both sides of the spear head expanded to the left and right sides. The whole spear was flowing with silver light, looking extremely mighty and domineering. Wang Yuetong's limpid eyes were full of extraordinary splendor. Not only her, but all the freshmen who saw this scene nearby also had their eyes lit up. Damn it! Li Beidian, who observed this big guy at a close distance, was silent for a few seconds. Then he said with an exaggerated face, "Tianlun, is this your big halberd?" Chapter 15. A distance of 2 or 3 kilometers was not far for ordinary people, not to mention the elite freshmen of the Sky Academy. The freshmen in the entrance square became more and more scattered. In less than 10 minutes, they were close to the maze mentioned by Headmaster Zhuang Huai. At the entrance of the maze, there seemed to be only a few narrow doors for people to enter and exit, but the left and right sides of the whole building were constantly expanding in opposite directions. In a trance, there was a kind of majestic atmosphere that one could not see the end of at a glance. Looking at it this way, the whole maze seemed to be a very standard triangle. What a big triangle! The plan is quite standard. Standing at the entrance of the maze, Li Beidian looked at the maze in front of him and said with a face full of admiration, "No, it shouldn't be a triangle. If it was a triangle, there would be a lot of corridors to design inside. It would cost a lot of money and be easy to design. It would be suitable for an amusement park. How could the maze of the Sky Academy be so low-level and simple?" Li Tianlan said calmly after carefully observing for a while. He had seen a maze of a similar scale in another place, which was even bigger than the one in front of him. In that damn place, it took him a whole year to barely figure out the overall structure of the maze, and its complexity could be described as crazy. Now, when he saw the maze of the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan suddenly felt very familiar. If his guess was correct, then the maze in front of him was very likely to be a replica of the maze he had seen before. If that was the case, then this maze was not a triangle at all, but a diamond that could deceive everyone's vision. The diamond maze was more complicated than the triangle maze. If one tried to walk through the diamond maze in the form of the triangle maze, it was very likely that he would enter a fork when he was closest to the exit, and then he would go around and around until he returned to the entrance again. Now, when he saw this thing at first sight, Li Tianlan suddenly touched some memories that he did not want to remember, and he felt a headache. So, from the moment we stood here, we should have been deceived. Behind the triangle in front of us, there should be another triangle. When combined, it is diamond? Ning Qianqing raised his eyebrows in surprise. He came from the Border Praetorian Corps. As the large-scale comprehensive corps with the most terrifying combat capability in Zhongzhou State, the Border Praetorian Corps would send its elites to the Sky Academy or the Deep Sea Academy every year. However, the Sky Academy was a 3-year academy, and it was only responsible for educating one batch of students in 3 years. The content of each batch's entrance maneuver was different. There was even a super entrance maneuver where the first place was awarded 300 credits. Although the maze was difficult, the seniors who had experienced it would not take it to heart and warn their junior brothers and sisters to pay attention to what to do in the maze. At the end of the day, this was just a labyrinth. They would be able to get out of it sooner or later. The most dangerous thing was still the competitors within the labyrinth. Li Tianlan nodded. Before he could speak, a sweet voice sounded directly behind him. "Yes, it's a diamond." Li Tianlan subconsciously turned around and looked behind him. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan stepped forward and stopped in front of Li Tianlan. "Senior brother, you've been to the Sky Academy before? How do you know that this maze is rhombus-shaped?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with her bright crystal-like eyes and asked softly. She stood quietly in front of Li Tianlan. Her ponytail swayed gently, her body fragrance wafted, and her voice was soft. She exuded a kind of pure but extremely enchanting charm. She was simply an enchantress. Ning Qianqing's expression was strange. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Beidian looked at Wang Yuetong dumbfoundedly and swallowed hard. He could not hide the fire in his heart at all. This woman, no, this girl, was really too exquisite. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. A strong look of appreciation flashed in his eyes, and then he became calm again. I've never been to the Sky Academy, and this is the first time I've seen this maze. His tone was very gentle, but his eyes turned to Yu Qingyan without any reluctance. He said with a smile, "Qing, is this your new roommate?" Yu Qingyan nodded obediently and smiled kindly. "Brotherly, this is Sister Yuetong, Wang Yuetong." Ahem. As soon as Yu Qingyan's voice fell, Li Beidian coughed violently. He wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth awkwardly, and the fiery desire in his eyes quickly began to fade. "Yuetong, why are you here?" Ning Qianqing finally spoke. Whether it was in his tone or in his eyes, there was an unconcealable surprise. "I'm here to study." "Brother Qianqing, how is Uncle Ning?" Wang Yuetong giggled. Her eyes sparkled, and her dimples appeared. Her whole body carried a kind of indescribable temptation and enchantment. "Not bad. Is Uncle Wang in good health?" Ning Qianqing seemed to not dare to look at Wang Yuetong at all and looked away. "My dad is also fine. He just met Uncle Ning in Jinling some time ago. Uncle Ning said that he hasn't seen you for more than 2 years." Wang Yuetong blinked her eyes. Ning Qianqing did not say a word and pretended not to hear anything. Wang Yuetong did not talk about this topic. She said a few words casually, and her bright eyes rested on Li Tianlan again. She moved her feet and circled around Li Tianlan several times, not hiding her interest in Li Tianlan at all. Li Tianlan did not feel anything, but Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian were so nervous that their bodies straightened and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Li Tianlan was puzzled. Just as he was about to speak, Wang Yuetong stopped and took the initiative to reach out to him. She said with a smile, "What's your name, senior brother?" "My name is Wang Yuetong." "I'm Li Tianlan." Li Tianlan reached out and shook hands with Wang Yuetong. The girl's palm was indescribably smooth and slender, and her fingers were slender. He let go of her without batting an eyelid and introduced, "This is my other roommate, Li Beidian." Wang Yuetong glanced at the bamboo pole, who was covered in cold sweat, and said with a playful expression, "Your name is Li Beidian?" "Yes, I'm Li Beidian, Duke Yuetong. Just call me by my name." Wang Yuetong waved her small hand and directly interrupted Li Beidian's words. All her interest seemed to be in Li Tianlan. She glanced at Li Tianlan again and suddenly smiled. "Senior brother Tianlan, where are you from?" "My ancestral home is Yuzhou, and I grew up in Nanyun province." Li Tianlan was polite and courteous, but he was highly alert in his heart. He did not know everything about the outside world, but it did not mean that he was stupid. A woman like Wang Yuetong was qualified to bring disaster to a country and people wherever she was. She stopped here for a while. And many freshmen around her stopped, intentionally or unintentionally. Except for the battle with Qin Ku when he first entered the school, Li Tianlan thought that his performance was not out of line. He was low-key and mediocre, and he hit it well. In this way, it was absolutely not a good thing for a girl like Wang Yuetong to suddenly show affection to him. Moreover, judging from the attitude of Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing toward Wang Yuetong, it was enough to show that they had a powerful background. Li Tianlan did not want to get in touch with such people at all. The more he got in touch with such people, the more likely it was that his real identity would be exposed. The consequences of exposing his identity were what Li Tianlan could not afford now. Before entering the thunder-shocking realm, at least before entering the fire-flaming realm, Li Tianlan's trump card to protect himself was too limited, so he had to be careful. "Nanyun, the scenery is beautiful, but it's too warm." "No, senior brother Tianlan, have you ever been to Beijing?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan curiously, her beautiful big eyes blinking like the most expensive doll. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. His expression did not change, but a trace of killing intent was brewing in his heart. What did she know? Just because of the maze in front of him? "No, I haven't been there," Li Tianlan said in a flat tone. He nodded at Yu Qingyan and said, "Qingyan, we're going in. Do you want to go with us?" Yu Qingyan blushed slightly. Thinking of her grandfather's instructions, she suddenly felt a little tempted. But looking at Wang Yuetong standing aside, she shook her head subconsciously and said, "I want to go with Sister Yuetong." "You want to go with me and also with your brother Li, right?" Wang Yuetong looked at Yu Qingyan with a smile and reached out to pull her to her side. She said to Li Tianlan, "Senior brother Ton, there are only 3 of you, and we are 2 weak girls. Why don't we team up?" Li Tianlan frowned slightly, but he could not refuse. He turned his head to look at his 2 unusually silent roommates and said, "What do you think?" "It's up to you." Ning Qianqing was a little absent-minded and said subconsciously. Then he realized that he had said something wrong and quickly corrected himself. "It's up to me." Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes subconsciously, and her heart suddenly trembled. "It's up to you. It's up to me." It's too obvious that the 2 sentences are trying to cover up something. Could it be that Brother Qianqing really came to be someone's lackey? What makes people even more speechless is that senior brother Tianlan in front of them obviously has not figured out the situation. "It's up to me too," Li Beidian said simply. "Then let's go together." Li Tianlan said calmly, "It's just that we are not familiar with the maze. If we affect Yuetong's ranking, I hope you won't blame us." "Of course not. If we follow senior brother Tianlan, we will definitely get through the maze as soon as possible." Wang Yuetong smiled sweetly, but there was some meaning in her eyes. Sure enough, she was still testing him. Li Tianlan turned around silently, his eyes cold. This female classmate, who seemed to have a powerful background, seemed to really start to have doubts. To some extent, her suspicion was indeed right. Judging from the appearance alone, he had seen this maze before, and it was in Beijiang province. That was the first time he walked out of Li's village, out of the primeval forest, and went to the endless desert. Li Tianlan breathed softly and took the lead to walk into the maze. The 5 of them turned around the first narrow path of 7 or 8 meters in the maze. After turning a corner, the road of the maze suddenly appeared in front of them. What appeared in front of them were more than a dozen intersections. The road made of the same blue bricks was 3 meters wide, spreading deep into the maze. This road went left, this road went right, this road went forward, the same road, but the direction was completely different. In front of more than a dozen intersections, countless freshmen went in and out. Some went in from the intersections, and some came back from the depths of the road. There was a lot of shouting and cursing. What the hell is this? These people are already confused at the very beginning of the road? Li Beidian looked incredulous. Wang Yuetong, who had been paying close attention to Li Tianlan's expression, also found that he was also shocked. But what did such a shock mean? She approached Li Tianlan quietly and said softly, "Senior brother Ton, how should we go?" "Whatever," Li Tianlan said casually, but his heart was full of emotions. The same. Almost all the same. The maze in front of them was based on the maze in Beijiang. Both the outside and the inside were the same, exactly the same. Under such circumstances, if Li Tianlan went all out, it would even take him less than 10 minutes to get out of this maze. Because he knew which way was the right way. Which way was misleading. "Go here." Li Tianlan suddenly pointed to an intersection and said calmly. Wang Yuetong suddenly froze. She said subconsciously, "Here?" If this road was right, it would be infinitely close to the exit in the end, but it would eventually go around to this position. This was a typical detour and a super detour. "It's here." Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong and said softly, "Yuetong, is there a problem?" He naturally knew that this road was wrong, but he also wanted to dispel Wang Yuetong's suspicion of him. In the current situation, getting out of the maze as soon as possible was not the most important thing. The most important thing was not to let Wang Yuetong suspect anything. So in this maze, he had decided to go as far as possible. Wang Yuetong immediately came to her senses and said with a sweet smile, "Okay, we'll go wherever you want. I'll go with you." Li Beidian laughed and put his skinny palm on Li Tianlan's shoulder casually, but he suddenly pushed Li Tianlan forward, as if he was deliberately pushing Li Tianlan forward. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat and he did not resist this force. He followed Li Beidian and quickly took a few steps forward, keeping a distance from Wang Yuetong behind him. Ning Qianxing followed without hesitation. Yu Qingyan and Wang Yuetong also followed. In a short time, this weird team of 5 seemed to have established its core. At the forefront, Li Beidian put his hand on Li Tianlan's shoulder and almost dragged him forward. The two took the lead and turned into an intersection. Li Beidian's voice sounded directly in Li Tianlan's ear, as if he was afraid of being heard. Tianlan, you'd better stay away from Wang Yuetong. Never, ever provoke her. Otherwise, even if the 3 of us were to join forces, we wouldn't be a match for him. Even if we brought out our backers, it wouldn't be enough. In the Sky Academy, there are not many people that I can't provoke, and even fewer people that pretending Cheng and I can't provoke. But Wang Yuetong is definitely one of them. Li Tianlan paused, glanced at Li Beidian and whispered, "What's her background?" Li Tianlan looked solemn. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said in a deep voice, "Princess Yuetong, the Wang's siren." He paused and continued, "She ranks 7th among the top 10 experts of the young generation." 7th? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and took Li Beidian into a dead end at random. Li Beidian nodded and was about to speak when he suddenly froze. He opened his mouth wide and looked at the front as if he had seen a ghost in the daytime. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. Li Tianlan was also stunned. In front of them was a black brick wall, the most common thing in the maze, blocking all the way forward. But in the corner of the wall, 2 people stood motionless. One was an old man and the other was a young man and a woman. The man, who looked gentle like a middle-aged scholar, was looking at Li Beidian and Li Tianlan with a smile and said in a gentle tone, "2 students, what do you mean by 7th? Beside the middle-aged scholar, a beautiful woman full of maturity and indifference was looking at Li Tianlan and Li Beidian coldly. Patter. Chapter 16. Principal. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang. There was also Qin Ke, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. Not only Li Beidian, but even Li Tianlan also felt dizzy. They would not be surprised to see these 2 people at any time and in any place. But to see them here at this time was a little unexpected. The maze was an extremely important place for the first internal maneuver of the freshmen. However, the principal and the deputy director of the teaching office were hiding in the blind spot of the maze without saying a word. What was the meaning of this? Was he playing hide and seek? If he hadn't heard that Zhuang Huayang was Qin Ke's grandfather, Li Tianlan would have suspected that the 2 of them had an improper relationship. "Hello, headmaster." Li Tianlan breathed gently and calmed himself down in an instant. He bowed slightly to Zhuang Huayang, then straightened up and looked at Qin Ke. He said with a smile, "Hello, Director Qin." Qin Ke snorted and stared at Li Tianlan fiercely. Zhuang Huayang nodded with a smile on his face. He looked at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at a rare treasure. It was similar to the way Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan a few minutes ago, but it was not exactly the same. Wang Yuetong's eyes were full of interest, curiosity, and playfulness. Zhuang Huayang's eyes were also full of interest, but there was a hint of understanding in them. Li Tianlan was still smiling as if he was wearing a mask on his face, but his heart was completely tense. Did the old man in front of him know his identity? Or was it because of the fight between him and Qin Ke? But in that battle, Qin Ke didn't suffer a loss. Instead, she was seriously injured. Could it be that Zhuang Huayang deliberately blocked her here for the teacher named Zhou? Why did it have to be like this? In just a few seconds, the atmosphere in the corner of the maze, with their backs facing the green brick wall, instantly became extremely heavy and oppressive. Li Beidian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and quietly straightened his body. His eyes were focused as he stood beside Li Tianlan. He seemed to have made up his mind. Seeing this detail with her own eyes, Qin Ke's eyes suddenly froze. Footsteps could be heard behind him. Ning Qianxing, Wang Yuetong, and Yu Qingyan followed Li Tianlan's footsteps into the blind spot at the same time. The moment they saw Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ke, the 3 of them were equally stunned. "Principal, Director Qin, hello, headmaster." Qin Ke's expression remained unchanged. Zhuang Huayang still nodded amiably and said with a smile, "Hello, Students. Principal, why are you and Director Qin here? Behind Li Tianlan, Wang Yuedong's beautiful face was a little blank, but she quickly glanced at Li Tianlan thoughtfully. During the entrance maneuver, two high-level officials of the school actually appeared to meet a group of freshmen. This kind of thing was too unusual. Intuitively, Wang Yuetong felt that it must have something to do with Li Tianlan. It was not only because Li Tianlan was very likely to have been to the most secret maze, but also because Wang Yuetong had an inexplicable intuition. Wang Yuetong had always trusted her intuition. But this time, her intuition told her that there was something wrong with Li Tianlan. This boy was too quiet. There was no sharpness, no aura. He just stood there casually. He was clearly the core, but he was so quiet that people couldn't help but ignore him. Still waters run deep. In a trance, Wang Yuetong actually had a feeling that the other party was unfathomable. Among the 5 people present at the moment, although Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing had terrifying backgrounds, they were not enough for Zhuang Huayang to meet them in person in the maneuver. Yu Qingyan, who was similar to Zhuang Huayang's adopted granddaughter, would not let Zhuang Huayang appear in person on such an occasion. As for herself, Zhuang Huayang and some high-level officials of the Sky Academy had already met her when she entered the school, so there was no need to see her again now. The only one left was Li Tianlan, who people couldn't figure out. Sure enough, Zhuang Huayang's words once again confirmed the correctness of Wang Yuedong's intuition. I have something to communicate with Li Tianlan. I don't want to waste your precious maneuver time. Do you mind? Zhuang Huayang said with a smile. The current top 10 experts of Zhongzhou State seemed to have a good temper to a certain extent. No matter what happened, he could smile, which made people feel good at first sight. Only a fool would say that he minded. They all shook their heads, but intentionally or unintentionally, no one chose to avoid it. Since the principal did not mention it, they were naturally willing to cooperate and play dumb. Zhuang Huayang just looked at Li Tianlan with a smile, waiting for his attitude. What do you want, principal? Just say it. Li Tianlan opened his mouth and said with respect, Okay. Zhuang Huayang was still smiling, but his eyes became sharp. Li Tianlan, why did you come to the Sky Academy? This question was easy to answer, but also difficult to answer. It seemed to be asking about Li Tianlan's goal, and also asking if Li Tianlan had other purposes. Li Tianlan looked indifferent and said slowly, I don't understand what you mean, principal. Then I'll make it clear. Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes. Do you have a goal in the Sky Academy? Was he going to be like a lot of other freshmen, trying to earn credits to graduate, then wait until he graduated to be a military officer so that he wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing? Or even have a bright future? No. Li Tianlan looked calm and looked straight at Zhuang Huayang. I want to be the first. The first? Zhuang Huayang chuckled without surprise. Every session of the Sky Academy students will stay. Some of them don't have enough credits for ordinary graduation within 3 years, and they still have half a year to make up for it. At the same time, there were also a few people who, due to luck or other special reasons, ultimately missed out on the first place that everyone wanted. These people were the strongest students in the previous cohort, and they would mix in with the new students and start all over again, competing with them. If you want to be the first, your competitors are not only the students you see, but also some of your seniors. Under such circumstances, do you have the confidence to get the first place? Yes. Li Tianlan said without hesitation in a deep voice. His voice was not high, but everyone could hear the confidence in his words. Full of confidence. You're ambitious. Zhuang Huayang smiled. So, to be the first, to become a giant, to fight for the country, to have clouds and rain with a turn of your hand, is this your goal? Li Tianlan nodded solemnly. He did not speak, but his whole body showed a kind of determination to achieve this goal even if he died. Then I don't understand. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and sighed. With such strength, ambition, and confidence, why do you still want to deliberately keep a low profile? Li Tianlan, what on earth do you want to hide? If you want to fight for the first place, you must be outstanding in all aspects. It's hard not to attract people's attention. You are the first in everything, but you like to pretend to be weak in daily life. If others don't suspect you, who will? You are so low-key and unpredictable. Even if all of us can refrain from exploring your secrets, even if you graduate with the first place, so what? You can't get the trust of the country, and in the end, it's just a waste of effort. Is such a result good for you? Li Tianlan's body suddenly shook, and in just a moment he was already soaked with cold sweat. Deliberately keeping a low profile, hiding himself, and not being understood, even if he graduated with the first place, so what? After the treason case, the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State have scruples. You have the ability, but you are not trusted. Then what kind of giant will you become? I don't have to ask what secrets you want to hide, but others won't? Gu Yunxia, Director Gu, is mainly responsible for the ideological education of the whole school. If you are so guilty, you will be targeted by her. Why bother? I'm not guilty. Li Tianlan flatly denied, but his heart was already in a mess. Zhuang Huayang deliberately pointed out the treason case and Gu Yunxia. Did this old man really know his identity? Did you Donglai tell him? This matter was so sensitive. Did you Donglai dare to tell Zhuang Huayang? Could Zhuang Huayang be completely trusted? Never guilty? Maybe. Zhuang Huayang smiled indifferently and suddenly looked at Li Tianlan and asked, Li Tianlan, do you dare to believe me? Trust your headmaster? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Zhuang Huayang. The gentle mask he always wore on his face seemed to be disappearing little by little, and his eyes also became suspicious and indifferent. So what if I believe? So what if I don't believe? If you believe me, please give it a try. I guarantee with my reputation and the lives of all my family members that within a year, no matter what, I will do my best to keep you safe. Zhuang Huayang looked at the indifferent eyes in front of him with a solemn expression. He took a deep breath and continued, regardless of everyone's sudden change of expression, of course, if you don't believe me, just pretend that I didn't say anything and we never met today. Wang Yuetong, who had been watching this drama as a bystander, quickly changed the look in her eyes, and even her breathing became a little rapid. A guarantor like Zhuang Huayang was extremely needed by anyone, even her family. But now he gave it to Li Tianlan? Only Li Tianlan was still as calm as water. Headmaster, you're too serious. As the headmaster, I dare not disbelieve you, but I need a reason. A reason? Zhuang Huayang's smile was completely stretched. There are many reasons, but I can only say two. First, Boss Qin values you very much. She persuaded old you to let me keep you safe for a year. She and old you both owe me a favor. Second, I'm willing to protect you because of my respect for some other people or things. Silence. After a long silence, Li Tianlan finally opened his mouth and said in a cold voice, In that case, I also owe you a favor, headmaster. Zhuang Huayang's smile became more and more obvious. He knew that he had gotten the result he wanted from this conversation. He nodded and said with a smile, Then I'll wait and see for this maneuver. Just watch. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm and cold. Zhuang Huayang laughed and turned slightly. In front of the brick wall, a flash of lightning flashed. His and Qin Ku's figures had disappeared in an instant. Li Tianlan stood where he was, deep in thought. Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian stood on either side of Li Tianlan, looking solemn. Yu Qingyan looked puzzled. Only Wang Yuetong vaguely felt that she seemed to have witnessed something. At the same time, on another road less than 30 meters away from Li Tianlan, Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ku appeared again. The air around them was violently distorted, but everything was silent. A few meters away, freshmen kept shuttling by, but no one noticed their existence. Grandpa, why do you help him like this? Qin Ku stood beside Zhuang Huayang and asked. She was not dissatisfied but a little confused. Zhuang Huayang smiled indifferently. Li Taishu and Ning Qianqing, two of the top 10 experts of the young generation, are willing to serve him. Wang Yuetong also pays so much attention to him, which has proved that Li Tianlan has now entered the sight of some big shots behind them. Why shouldn't I help such a person? That's all. Qin Ke looked at her grandpa's expression and asked seriously. Zhuang Huayang was silent for a moment. In his granddaughter's expectant eyes, he shook his head slightly and said with a solemn expression, "Haven't you always wanted to ask me where I was a few days ago?" Qin Ke nodded slightly. Zhuang Huayang said with a self-deprecating smile, "In fact, I didn't go anywhere. I've been in the Sky Academy, watching Li Tianlan in his room. It's just that you don't know, and he didn't notice." Seeing that Qin Ke's expression instantly became extremely strange, he continued, "In the past few days, he has been meditating every day. Qin Ke, have you ever seen a person who hasn't entered the 4 realms of martial arts meditate for more than 16 hours a day? That's impossible." Qin Ke said flatly, "I'm now in the thundershocking realm, but the limit of my daily meditation is only 10 hours. I can't even do 16 hours. As an expert of the thundershocking realm, Qin Ke could sit still for a few days without a problem. But meditation was different. The goal of meditation was to forget oneself and to be absolutely focused on one's will. Qin Ke was now an expert of the thundershocking realm, but she could only let her will be absolutely focused for 10 hours. If she wanted to make progress, she could only accumulate it slowly in meditation again and again. 1 minute more this time, 2 minutes more next time. And the longer she meditated, the faster she would make progress. In Qin Ke's current state, the limit of absolute concentration was only 10 hours. Once it exceeded this time, her will would be shaken. If she forced herself to hold on, the effect was equivalent to not making progress but going backward. It was impossible for a person who could meditate deeply for 16 hours to not enter the 4 realms of martial arts. Even a pig could enter the fire-flaming realm with such concentration. Impossible? Zhuang Huayang's smile was complicated, and so was his eyes. He looked in the direction of Li Tianlan and said softly, "Isn't there one?" At this moment, even though Qin Ke had already guessed it, she was still shocked speechless. How is this possible? She took a deep breath and muttered to herself, "Nothing is impossible." He did not meditate deeply for 16 hours a day, but for several days in a row. I wanted to see how many days he could hold on, but unfortunately, Zhuang Huayang shook his head regretfully. "Unfortunately what?" Qin Ke asked subconsciously. "Unfortunately, I couldn't hold on. I watched him for 3 days in a row, and I almost starved to death. He has such an identity, such talent, and such a family background. I'm willing to protect him for a year." Zhuang Huayang sighed again. "Identity? Background?" Qin Ke frowned and said nothing, but she was thinking about what Grandpa had found in these days. Because of Li Tianlan, Li Taishu, Ning Chenxing, Qin Weibai, Yu Donglai, and even myself have now become the pawns of the person playing chess in the dark. Look, how many forces are involved. In recent years, there seems to be a force pushing something in the dark. Now, it seems to be more and more obvious. No matter who is behind Li Tianlan, what they are planning is earth-shattering. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and then smiled sarcastically. And today, that idiot Gu Yunxia mentioned the treason case again. Now it seems that this matter is likely to inadvertently help the person playing chess in the dark. It's getting more and more interesting. Qin Ke twitched the corner of her mouth and said coldly, "Director Gu's performance at the entrance ceremony today is completely beneath her status." Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said, "She also has no choice. She is just a vanguard and can only follow the general trend. The person behind Gu Yunxia is only plotting a murderous weapon. Everything behind Li Tianlan is really terrible when you think about it carefully. At present, there are only a few clues, but it is already turbulent. Once it fully erupts one day, how magnificent will it be?" "Grandpa, do you think," Qin Ke hesitated for a moment and said cautiously, "do you think all this will involve the palace master behind Qin Weibai? Or is all this secretly planned by him?" As a mysterious rising figure in Huading in recent years, whether Qin Weibai had a backer in Zhengzhou state was still shrouded in mystery. But her backer in the dark world, as long as it was in public, was known to all. "No." Zhuang Huayang thought for a while and shook his head very slowly. "He is abroad and can't do anything. No matter how invincible he is, he can't advance or retreat freely under the muzzle of the human emperor. Neither the person holding the human emperor nor the one behind Gu Yunxia will allow him to enter Zhongzhou state unless he wants to die. He took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and muttered to himself, "The wind is rising and the clouds are surging. Grandpa, do you remember what semi-immortal Xian Xian said a few years ago when he appeared in Yuzhou?" Qin Ku suddenly said, "Didn't he say that the person holding the human emperor was a saint inside and a king outside? The old guy is just deliberately mystifying things." In the face of his granddaughter, Zhuang Huayang was dismissive of the Taoist eccentric who was close to a half-immortal in Zhongzhou state. Deliberately mystifying things? Grandpa, do you really think so? Xian Xuanzi is famous in Zhongzhou state. He doesn't speak, but once he does, will he say anything wrong? Not to mention his legendary deeds of locking the dragon vein for Zhongzhou state for 30 years. Qin Ku said disapprovingly, "Why do you mention that old guy Xian Xuanzi?" Zhuang Huayang was obviously a little irritable when he mentioned the famous half-immortal in Zhongzhou state. When he saw the person holding the human emperor, he said that he was a saint inside and a king outside. "But Grandpa, do you remember what he said when he saw the super big shot behind Director Gu?" Qin Ku said in a serious tone. Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. "When the heavenly sun appears, the catastrophe is coming. The heavenly sun will face the catastrophe. Who will face the heavenly sun?" Qin Ku said word by word, "Grandpa, great changes are coming in the dark world. We have to prepare early." Chapter 17. Inside the maze made of black bricks. Li Tanlan stood quietly, as if he was lost in thought. It had been more than 10 minutes since Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ke left. During these 10 minutes, Li Tianlan remained motionless and frighteningly silent. Not only him, but Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing were also silent. Their bodies were straight and they stood silently beside Li Tianlan, like two loyal guards who were firm and lifeless. Yu Qingyan was gentle and patient. She also noticed that the meeting between Zhuang Huayang and Li Tianlan was unusual, so she just stood there without saying a word. Only Wang Yuetong stood in the last row. Although she did not speak, her eyes kept moving between Li Tianlan and the other two. Her eyes seemed to rest on Li Tianlan most of the time, and the interest in her eyes grew stronger and stronger. Wang Yuetong knew that her current state was a little dangerous. Emotionally speaking, when a woman had a strong interest in a man, it often meant the beginning of a good or bad relationship. But she was just a young girl in her 20s this year. Facing Li Tianlan, a man who seemed to be full of mysteries, she could not control her curiosity. Zhuang Huayang guaranteed with his personal reputation and the lives of his family. Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing followed. The support of Yu Donglai, who was known as the poison doctor and still had a certain influence in the secret service system of Zhongzhou state. What was so special about Li Tianlan that he could get so much unusual attention? Wang Yuetong was eager to make a move. She could not help but have a desire to dig out all of Li Tianlan's secrets. 20 minutes. Li Tianlan still did not move. The atmosphere in the dead corner of the maze became more and more subtle and oppressive. Although this place was a dead end, there were still several waves of freshmen who inadvertently walked here in 20 minutes. However, after seeing Li Tianlan and the others, no one caused any trouble. Since there was no way forward, everyone wisely chose to retreat. The road in the maze had just begun, but now they could not wait to jump out and attack others. They were either crazy or fools. 30 minutes. Li Tianlan still didn't move. From the beginning to the present, he seemed to have fallen into a very strange state. From head to toe, not even a hair on his body had moved. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan were a little far away and did not feel anything, but Ning Qianxing and Li Beidian were getting more and more surprised. Tianlan seems to be meditating? Li Beidian finally couldn't help but whisper. He was the closest to Li Tianlan, so he could clearly feel that Li Tianlan's breathing was getting steadier and longer, with an indescribable frequency, which was completely consistent with the state of meditation. Ning Qianxing nodded. He felt as ridiculous and shocked as Li Beidian. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan were equally shocked. Wang Yuetong took a step forward and approached Ning Qianxing. She whispered, Is senior brother Tianlong really meditating? I think so, Ning Qianxing said with a wry smile, a little uncertain. It was probably the first time in the Sky Academy's decades of history that Ning Qianxing entered a meditative state at the beginning of the entrance maneuver. Martial Dao meditation required absolute concentration of the will. For the vast majority of people, they needed an extremely quiet environment to slowly focus their attention. Taking Ning Qianxing as an example, in a quiet environment, he needed at least half an hour to an hour to enter a meditative state. His state of mind was already outstanding enough among the younger generation, but what about Li Tianlong? In the maneuver, the sound of footsteps was endless. From the moment Zhuang Huayang left, he seemed to have begun to meditate. What a terrifying state of mind it took to meditate at any time. He can enter meditation in an instant. Such a state of mind is amazing. Wang Yuedong's eyes were shining, and her smile became increasingly bright and enchanting. She suddenly realized that her inadvertent curiosity seemed to have really discovered a great treasure, or rather, a talent. Li Beidian laughed bitterly and shook his head. That's true, but this is really not a good time to meditate. So, if I'm not wrong, senior brother Tianlong should be about to break through. What the headmaster said just now was very clear. It was clear that he didn't want to have any scruples, so he chose this time to break through and improve his combat capability. There was a trace of expectation in Wang Yuedong's tone that she didn't even notice. She really wanted to see what this quiet and scary boy was like when he was arrogant. What realm do you think senior brother Tianlong is in now? Ice condensing realm at least? Li Beidian said with some uncertainty. He just said that his combat capability is similar to mine and Brother Awesome's, so he should be in the ice condensing realm. If he breaks through, will he enter the fire flaming realm? When he said this, he opened his eyes wide in disbelief. In deep meditation, he concentrated his will to the extreme, sublimated in an instant, and successfully broke through to the fire flaming realm. It sounded normal, but now Li Tianlong seemed to be less than 20 years old. There were few experts in the fire-flaming realm at this age in the entire Zhongzhou state. If Li Tianlong really succeeded in breaking through, the list of the top 10 young experts in Zhongzhou state might have to be rearranged. He's moving. Li Baitian's heart surged. He wanted to say something, but he inadvertently saw Li Tianlong out of the corner of his eye and suddenly blurted out 2 words. Everyone's eyes instantly focused on Li Tianlong. Li Tianlong's posture didn't seem to change, but he seemed to be straighter than before. His vertical hands were trembling slightly, and his fingers were slowly clenching. A series of bone-cracking sounds came from his body, from top to bottom, densely packed. Li Tianlong suddenly clenched his fists and opened his eyes. In the air, an extremely sharp whistling sound suddenly rang out the moment he clenched his fist. With his clenched fist as the center, several fierce or heavy gusts of wind cut through the air. They were invisible and intangible, but their momentum was awe-inspiring. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Baitian's mouth twitched, and he looked at Li Tianlong with a speechless face. After a while, he slowly asked, "Tianlong, you broke through?" Li Tianlong's eyes were relaxed, and he said with a smile, "Yes, I broke through to the chi-controlling realm. Not the fire-flaming realm, not the ice-condensing realm. It was the most basic chi-controlling realm." Li Beidian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His voice sounded like a moan. "Congratulations. Congratulations. Tianlong, you've really learned bad things from acting tough Cheng." He didn't despise Li Tianlong's low realm, but he suddenly remembered that before they set off, Li Tianlong told him and Ning Qianxing that he was about the same as them. At that time, Li Tianlong hadn't even entered martial arts. It was indeed about the same, just about 2 realms apart. What a reserved person. He had only known acting tough Cheng for a day. How could he also start to act tough? "Congratulations, everyone." Li Tianlong chuckled. He naturally knew what Li Beidian was thinking now, but he didn't bother to explain. It would be too tiring to explain the serious inconsistency between combat strength and realm. He had already made his stand to Zhuang Huayang that he would no longer keep a low profile. Whether he wanted to or not, he had to be strong to the end. At that time, Li Beidian would naturally understand his current state. Li Tianlan already knew what to do before he came. What Zhuang Huayang said just now did give him a lot of inspiration. He understood the principle of accepting good advice, but it didn't mean that he would easily change his behavior and conduct because of others' words. But Li Tianlan also knew that since Zhuang Huayang had shown up, there was not much room for him to choose. At worst, he had to keep a low profile and do things in a high profile. He was indomitable in martial arts, but it didn't mean that he didn't know when to stop. In the face of a headmaster who was likely to know his identity, if he didn't make a little compromise and change, the consequences would be unpredictable. Qingyan. Li Tianlan suddenly spoke. He looked at Yu Qingyan and asked, "When senior you went to visit Headmaster Zhuang, do you know what they said?" He had to know whether Zhuang Huayang knew his identity and how he knew it, because it was about Zhuang Huayang's attitude and position. "I don't know." Yu Qingyan shook her head honestly. "Grandpa never tells me about this." Li Tianlan nodded slightly and said nothing. "Senior brother Ton, what are you worried about?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan meaningfully and asked aloud. Although Li Tianlan's low realm surprised her, she still had a strong interest in Li Tianlan. "I just asked casually. Why are you so sensitive, junior sister Yuetong? It's not a good thing to be too curious." Li Tianlan smiled indifferently. Wang Yuetong was stunned. At this moment, she finally found that Li Tianlan was a little different from just now. At first glance, there seemed to be no change, but compared with half an hour ago, there was a hint of looming sharpness in him now. Especially the last sentence, which was soft but firm. It seemed to be an exhortation, but it could be understood as a warning, which seemed to be possible. She called him senior brother Tianlan just out of politeness, but this person actually took the opportunity to call her junior sister. The distance between them was much closer. But judging from Li Tianlan's expression, it was obvious that he didn't take her seriously. Wang Yuetong raised her delicate eyebrows slightly and said with a chuckle, "I just asked casually. Senior brother Tianlan seems to be more sensitive than me. But I think what the headmaster just said is right. If you keep a low profile and deliberately hide, how can you make those people fight for you?" She was talking about Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian, but Li Tianlan thought of those who had died for the Li family. At this moment, Li Tianlan's mind was like a tide, surging. He thought of the former glory of the Li family, the long winter night and the cold and wet forest at the border, the camp on the border where too many people were unwilling to accept their fate, the vast desert and dazzling maze in Beijiang, Gu Yunxia's mean and ugly face on the rostrum, and Yu Donglai, who obviously didn't like him but was still willing to help him after so many years, and Qin Weibai. All kinds of pictures kept rotating in his mind. Li Tianlan raised the corner of his mouth and smiled brightly. "Like the morning glow. That makes sense." He looked at Wang Yuetong and said with a smile, "In that case, let's go from here." He stretched out his hand and pointed at a blind spot in the maze, a blind spot that was blocked by a green brick wall. "This," Li Beidian smiled bitterly and said, "How can we go from here? Do we bump into it?" The blue brick maze was a completely enclosed structure. The walls, ceiling, and floor were all blue bricks. Although Li Beidian didn't know this maze, he recognized the blue bricks. This kind of brick came from Qinzhou province in Zhongzhou state and was made of a special soil in the mountains, which was several times tougher than ordinary red bricks. When he came in, he smelled a kind of adhesive, and it was a military adhesive. It could be seen that the blue bricks in front of him were all held together with a super strong adhesive. According to his observation, a wall in the maze was at least 1 meter thick. Bump into it? In theory, it was possible, and so could he. If he hit it with all his strength, he could. But the maze was so big, how many times could he hit it? He would die of exhaustion. "You're right. Just hit it." Li Tianlan smiled brightly. The human emperor shook gently in his sleeve and fell into his hand. Li Tianlan raised one hand, and the human emperor stretched in the air. The wind and thunder roared, and it moved forward. The wall touched the tip of the spear, and sparks flew. The blue brick wall, which was 3 meters high and at least 1 meter thick, suddenly collapsed with a loud bang, and the bricks and stones flew everywhere. Li Tianlan looked calm and stepped forward. Smash everything, tear everything. The direction I'm moving forward is my way, my martial arts. I won't retreat until I die. Zhuang Huayang told him that if he believed in him, please give it a try. Then I'll give it a try. The human emperor streaked across the air, and the sound was surging, with a loud bang. The second wall was smashed again when he raised his hand. Li Tianlan turned and disappeared. What kind of qi-controlling realm is this? Isn't this bullying? Li Beidian was stunned for a few seconds, and then he suddenly came to his senses and shouted in exasperation. He could also break the blue brick wall in front of him, but he needed to use all his strength. However, Li Tianlan, who was in the qi-controlling realm, broke the wall as easily as breaking glass, and hit it twice in a row without any effort. Li Beidian was already at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, and he was at least one big realm ahead of Li Tianlan, who had just broken through to the qi-controlling realm. But what about the big realm now? Was it lost? Or was it eaten by a dog? Holding Yu Qingyin's hand, Wang Yuetong quickly followed him without hesitation. When she passed by Li Beidian, she said calmly, "The two moves just now were all from senior brother Tianlan's own physical strength. His strength and speed are both perfect. If I'm not wrong, senior brother Tianlan should be born with divine strength and wind and thunder veins." Wind and thunder veins. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing were shocked at the same time. The so-called wind and thunder veins, one was the wind vein, and the other was the thunder vein, which was extremely rare. The internal structure of this kind of person was also different from that of most people. To be exact, there were 2 extra meridians that could spread from the arms to the legs and run through the limbs. The wind vein was born with great speed. The thunder vein was born with great strength. The gathering of wind and thunder was 1 in a billion, and it was even rarer than the experts of the invincible realm. Such a person was completely born for martial arts, and he had the capital to be invincible in the same realm and even kill the enemies of higher realms. Not to mention the wind and thunder veins, just the wind vein or the thunder vein alone was a top talent that all the forces would fight for. Those with the wind vein were born to be assassins, and those with the thunder vein were born to be valiant generals. Such a person was completely unique in martial arts. Was Li Tianlan really a super genius with the wind and thunder veins? Princess Yuetong. Li Beidian suddenly opened his mouth and called her in a deep voice. What's wrong? Wang Yuetong paused and turned to look at Li Beidian. Tianlan really has the wind and thunder veins? Li Beidian asked in a serious tone. If this question was confirmed, then he must report it to the people behind him. As long as a warrior with the wind and thunder veins grew up, he would be a proper expert of the invincible realm in the future. And he would be much stronger than the ordinary experts of the invincible realm. In the dark world, there were divine and holy lists that listed the experts of the invincible realm in the world. The divine list was ranked before the holy list, and even the last expert of the invincible realm on the divine list was stronger than the first on the holy list. This was enough to show that even the experts of the invincible realm had different levels. An expert of the invincible realm with the wind and thunder veins could at least be on the divine list. This was absolutely not a trivial matter. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered with a strange, fiery look. She nodded and said, "Most likely." Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other, both looking excited. Wang Yuetong's answer to the question of whether Li Tianlan had the wind and thunder veins was absolutely authoritative. Because this siren of the Wang family herself was a genius with the wind vein, and she had a brother who also had the wind and thunder veins. Wang Xingsha, 23 years old, half a step to the thunder-shocking realm. He ranked first among the top 10 young experts of Zhongzhou State, along with another talented young heavenly son. Boom! The sound of the blue wall collapsing rang out for the 3rd time. "Hurry up, follow them," Ning Qianqing said, and they directly rushed in the direction of Li Tianlan. In front of them, Li Tianlan held the silver spear in his hand and walked steadily forward, without retreating or looking back. Forward. Raise the spear. Break the wall. The blue walls in front of Li Tianlan were broken one after another, but his movements were steady and coherent. 1 wall, 5 walls, 15 walls. Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian followed behind Li Tianlun. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan walked behind them. The five of them walked in the maze, smashing their way through in a crushing manner. Behind the five of them, more and more freshmen gathered behind the five of them. If it were you, how many walls could you break? Li Beidian glanced at Ning Qianqing and asked. 15? 20? That's almost the limit. What about you? Ning Qianqing smiled bitterly and glanced at Li Tianlun, who did not show any signs of fatigue after breaking 15 walls in a row. He could not tell what he was feeling. Was the legendary wind and thunder veins really so terrifying? Li Tianlun was already so powerful when he was in the chi-controlling realm. If the young heavenly son of the Wang family who had wind and thunder veins and was about to enter the thunder-shocking realm made a move, how terrifying would it be? Me too. Li Beidian looked serious and said, we are almost the same. After 20 walls, your willpower should not be able to keep up, but my physical strength can't keep up. Wang Yuetong followed them quietly, but she did not hear what they were talking about. Her clear eyes, which seemed to be able to reflect everything, were fixed on Li Tianlun's back from beginning to end, not wanting to leave him at all. In her sight, it was an ordinary figure, not tall or burly, but ordinary. But at this moment, as he moved forward in this enclosed maze, it seemed that all the obstacles would be completely smashed into ashes under his silver spear. Feng Feiyun walked, unstoppable. Only he moved forward between heaven and earth. He was a man with an ordinary appearance and figure, but at this time, his every move exuded a kind of confidence and style that looked down on the world. His charm was unparalleled. Every time he made a move, there was a myriad of phenomena, which could be called peerless. Wang Yuetong's eyes were blurred and she was intoxicated. The sound of the blue wall collapsing in front of them continued, and the whole maze seemed to be shaking violently. It was the 40th minute since they entered the maze. Chapter 18. The further Li Tianlun went in the maze, the more certain he was that the maze he was in now was an imitation of the maze that had almost tortured him to madness in Beijiang. This should be a simplified version of the maze in Beijiang. The entrance was exactly the same as the beginning section, and the scale was roughly the same. But when he reached the middle section, Li Tianlun keenly discovered that the forks that were the easiest for people to get lost in had all disappeared and turned into a straight path. In this way, the complexity of the interior of the maze had suddenly become several times simpler. Li Tianlun had stayed in the maze in Beijiang for nearly a year and a half. To exaggerate a little, in that maze, he could almost find the exit with his eyes closed. Now he was in this simplified version of the maze. After removing the forks that were the easiest for people to take detours, every vein of the entire maze was extremely clear in his mind. The 40th minute. 35 walls were broken. Although Li Tianlun still had strength to spare, he stopped breaking the walls. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing followed him all the way. Behind them were Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan. Now that Li Tianlun stopped, the other four stood directly in the passage and looked at each other. At this moment, the 35 consecutive blue walls behind him had been completely broken. The process did not take long, but every path in the maze was almost exactly the same. They turned left and right, forward and backward. Even Wang Yuetong, who knew the maze better than anyone else, could not tell where they were. The others were even more confused. Tianlun. Li Beidian waited for a while and looked at Li Tianlun, who was standing still, and subconsciously called him. Let's go here. Li Tianlun stood in the middle of the passage, pointed to his right and said slowly. Among the 5 people present, including the group of freshmen behind him, Li Tianlun was undoubtedly the only one who could determine his position. So he was very sure that the exit of the maze would appear in front of everyone as soon as the blue wall in front of him was broken. But after calculating the time, he gave up this seemingly domineering but actually not smart enough approach. The maze was diamond-shaped. From the entrance, the further one went, the larger the space, which also meant that the chances of the freshmen meeting each other were smaller. But once the second half was close to the exit, the further one went, the smaller the space became. In the end, there might only be a few crossings, so the chances of meeting other students were higher. The possibility of a fight was almost 100%. Li Tianlan never dared to underestimate other people's IQ. Now it had been nearly 50 minutes since they entered the entrance, and the difficulty of the maze in front of them was not as complicated as he had imagined. Those with better brains should be very close to the exit by now, either by luck or calculation. And the first batch of people to approach the exit would undoubtedly be the strongest among the freshmen. What kind of scene would it be when a small portion of the strongest who had a competitive relationship and their own pride met together? Although Li Tianlan didn't mind being high-profile, he was not stupid. Zhuang Huayang had made it clear that the maneuver would last for 5 hours, through the maze and a forest. That was to say, the maze was only the first half of the maneuver. In the first maneuver after entering the school, if they could save the most combat power for the final sprint, no one would refuse it. If there were fewer battles at the exit, Li Tianlan would be very happy. He didn't mind being high-profile, but what he cared about most were credits and results. As long as the results could satisfy him, the process was not important at all. So the path he chose at this time was not the closest to the exit, but the farthest. If they walked along this path, it would take at least 10 minutes to reach the exit if they were not in a hurry. The figures of the 5 people turned a corner in the maze and then disappeared. Behind them, a large number of freshmen who followed the 5 people looked at each other. After hesitating for a moment, they quickly dispersed. Some left in the opposite direction of Li Tianlan, some chose to continue walking with Li Tianlan, and some disappeared from other intersections. In this maze, they had no idea where they were and could only make decisions based on intuition. Some of the people who continued to follow Li Tianlan undoubtedly had the most accurate intuition, but a little hesitation made them miss the opportunity again. When they followed Li Tianlan around the corner, Li Tianlan and the other 4 people were no longer in sight. What appeared in front of them were 3 identical, empty passages. Senior brother Tianlan has the wind and thunder veins. Congratulations! This is the fortune of Zhongzhou State. In time, I'm afraid there will be another invincible person in Zhongzhou State. Even now, senior brother Tianlan makes me look at you with new eyes. In the empty passage, Wang Yuetong directly passed Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing and walked beside Li Tianlan with a smile. She was very close to Li Tianlan, but she did not have any physical contact with his body, keeping an imperceptible bottom line. The two walked side by side. Wang Yuetong tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan. Her limpid eyes were intoxicated with a trace of admiration and envy. It was hard to tell whether she was sincere or not. How can you be sure that I have wind and thunder veins, junior sister Yuetong? Li Tianlan glanced at her and asked with a gentle smile. Arrogance. Arrogance. At such a close distance, Wang Yuetong finally felt the other emotions under Li Tianlan's calmness and gentleness. It was a kind of pride that seemed to look down on all the women in the world. The casual glance just now made Wang Yuetong feel an obvious sense of frustration. A strange emotion gently rippled in her heart. Wang Yuetong bit her red lips, and then her smile became sweeter. She was the kind of enchanting stunner whose every frown and smile could charm a large number of men and even men. Now she deliberately befriended Li Tianlan. In her sweet smile, the whole passage seemed to be filled with a kind of youthful charm. Senior brother, are you testing me? I have the wind vein, so I am very sensitive to speed. Coincidentally, I have a brother who also has the wind and thunder veins. When he moves, he is exactly the same as senior brother. So I was sure at first sight. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wang Yuetong. Those who had the wind vein were born assassins. They were born with amazing speed and flexibility. If they did not die prematurely, they could at least reach the peak of the thunder-shocking realm and even have the chance to be invincible. Such a talent was indeed amazing. But what interested him more was her brother. In the dark world, those who had the wind or thunder veins were already rare, and those who had the wind and thunder veins were even rarer. They were said to be 1 in 100 years. Now that he had just arrived at the Sky Academy, he heard the news of another person with the wind and thunder veins, which suddenly made him feel that the wind and thunder veins were a little worthless. How old is your brother this year? What realm is he in? Wang Yuetong wrinkled her delicate little nose. The simple action suddenly made her look more playful. When she mentioned her brother, her smile became more brilliant and proud. Obviously, the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. 23 years old. He has now surpassed the peak of the fire-flaming realm and is about to enter the thunder-shocking realm. In the same realm, my brother has fought hundreds of times and has never been defeated. No one in the younger generation is his match. Li Tianlan's pupils contracted slightly. At the age of 23, a person who was half a step to the thunder-shocking realm with the wind and thunder veins would be the most dazzling genius in any era. If he could successfully graduate from the Sky Academy, achieve his goal and grow up, Wang Yuetong's brother would definitely be his strong rival in the future. I also admit that Wang Shengshao does have the capital to be invincible. But isn't it a little exaggerated to say that no one in the younger generation is his match? Li Baitian's somewhat sour voice sounded behind Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong squinted her beautiful eyes and turned her head to look back. The originally youthful and enchanting peerless beauty suddenly had a kind of pride and majesty that people couldn't look at directly. What? You're not convinced? Do you think you're my brother's match? Why are you angry, Miss Yuetong? I'm just telling the truth. Of course, I'm no match for your brother. But if he's really invincible in the younger generation, why should he be ranked first among the top 10 young experts with another young heavenly son? Li Baidian seemed to be extremely scrupulous about Wang Yuetong and said with a wry smile. Humph, it's just a random ranking made by a bored person. My brother doesn't care about it. Gu Hanshan can be ranked with my brother because he didn't provoke my brother. Otherwise, he would have been beaten into a pig's head. Wang Yuetong looked proud. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Li Tianlan calmly changed the topic and said with a smile, Everyone, I've been hearing you talk about the top 10 young experts, but I've never heard of this list before. Can anyone introduce it to me? Qingyan, go ahead. Wang Yuetong pulled Yu Qingyan over and said. In front of them was a group of 5. Whether Li Tianlan knew it or not, it was a fact that 3 of them were on the list of the top 10 young experts. As far as Yu Qingyan was concerned, her position was completely neutral, lest some shameless people would raise their status. In Wang Yuetong's opinion, in Wang Yuetong's view, Li Baidian was very suspicious. It's just hearsay. There are many things that can't be confirmed. Yu Qingyan's pretty face blushed. She was really too shy. Her big eyes blinked, and she looked a little flustered under the attention of several people. It's okay. Just tell us what you heard. Wang Yuetong touched Yu Qingyan's hair and said with a smile. Yeah, I'm just asking casually. I just want to see who the top young talents of Zhongzhou State are. Li Tianlan smiled and nodded to Yu Qingyan. Yu Qingyan blushed again. She followed Li Tianlan and whispered, The top 10 experts of the young generation are mainly ranked for experts under the age of 25. They are ranked every year. Although they are not very authoritative, most people believe in them. Li Tianlan nodded. 25 years old was very interesting. Because in martial arts, 25 years old was a threshold. Whether one could cross the ice-condensing realm and enter the fire-flaming realm at this age or not would largely determine one's future achievements. Of course, there were many late bloomers in any period, but such examples were too few to be representative at all. The first one is Wang Shengshao, the heir of the Wang family. He has wind and thunder veins and is almost invincible in the same realm. At the age of 23, he is already an expert half a step to the thunder-shocking realm. And the one who ranks first with Wang Shengshao is Gu Hanshan, the young master of Kunlun City. He has the heavenly king heart, and his realm is roughly the same as Wang Shengxiao's. His combat capability should also be roughly the same. When Yu Qingyan said this, she secretly glanced at Wang Yuetong, for fear that Sister Yuetong would be angry. But Wang Yuetong looked calm and didn't seem to be dissatisfied at all. Kunlun City? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and said in a doubtful tone, but with a trace of coldness that even he himself didn't notice. Kunlun, surnamed Guyunxia. At this moment, some kind of inspiration seemed to explode in Li Tianlan's mind, and his mood was indescribably complicated. Yes, Kunlun City is now the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. There are currently 4 invincible realm experts in Zhongzhou State, and 2 of them are in Kunlun City. Yu Qingyan said obediently. 2 invincible realm experts? Both surnamed Gu? The coldness in Li Tianlan's eyes flashed away. He twitched the corner of his mouth and asked in a stiff tone. The power center of the special warfare system, Kunlun City. Li Tianlan was a little annoyed and self-deprecating. Many years ago, Zhongzhou State didn't have the name Kunlun City at all. Even if it did, it was not the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. At that time, there was only one core of the entire special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, and that was the Li family. The Li family of Kunlun that belonged to him. Was there a reason for this that was worth pondering? Chapter 19. Yes, they're all surnamed Gu. Yu Qingyan glanced at Li Tianlan in surprise and answered softly. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, nodded and said with a smile, "Go on." Yu Qingyan nodded and said in a lighter tone, "The second one is Jiang Shangyu, the only son of the Jiang family in Beijiang, Zhongzhou State. He has the exquisite bone and is currently in the fire-flaming realm. He is currently 24 years old and is studying at the Deep Sea Academy. The third one is a woman, Dongqing Rushi, the second daughter of the Dongqing family in Zhongyuan province. She is the second daughter of Marshal Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Control Corps. She is 19 years old and is currently in the fire-flaming realm. It is said that, like Jiang Shangyu, she is also a genius with the exquisite bone." Li Tianlan smiled. As Yu Qingyan revealed the top 10 young experts one by one, he really felt that he had underestimated the heroes in the world before. Wind and Thunder Veins, Heavenly King Heart, and Exquisite Bone. Those who were born with these were real martial arts geniuses. Wind and Thunder Veins were born with great speed and strength. Heavenly King Heart was the body's quick response, and the mind was far beyond ordinary people. In terms of meditation, those who had Heavenly King Heart had a greater advantage than anyone else. Compared with others in the same realm, their cultivation progress could be said to be rapid. Having Heavenly King Heart was equivalent to getting the ticket to the invincible realm at birth. The effect of the exquisite bone was slightly weaker, but it was only slightly weaker. Geniuses with the exquisite bone had extremely strong learning and comprehension abilities. If they were lucky, they might not necessarily be weaker than those with the wind lightning veins and Heavenly King Heart. Among the top 10 experts of the young generation, only the top 3 for people made Li Tianlan feel a strong pressure. The fourth one is Li Taishu, the great void sword master of Mount Shu. He is 23 years old and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. In nearly 300 years, only 2 great void sword masters appeared in Mount Shu. In the rest of the time, the great void sword was always in a masterless state. However, the 2 great void sword masters both became experts of the invincible realm. Therefore, in many people's eyes, this great void sword master is also likely to become an expert of the invincible realm. Behind him, Li Baitian's mouth twitched fiercely and his face was full of pain. Damn, what does it mean by a certain possibility? Is it 100%? Li Tianlan continued to nod. He had heard from his grandfather that Mount Shu, Jade Pool, and Azura Path were the main martial arts forces with a long history in Zhongzhou State. In terms of swordsmanship, Mount Shu could be said to be the best in the world. It was not that Mount Shu was the best in swordsmanship, but that Mount Shu's swordsmanship was rich. Mount Shu had a sword will. It was magnificent, and the sword will soared into the sky. This sentence had been circulating in the world since the first appearance of Mount Shu, and it was still being talked about enthusiastically. As for the myriad phenomena of the Mount Shu sword chi, they were basically all concentrated on the 4 sword masters of Mount Shu. The 4 famous swords of Mount Shu were Nirvana, Phantom, Yin Yang, and Taishu. Each sword had a different sword intent. Among them, the Taishu sword intent was the most ethereal. To be able to make the Taishu sword recognize him as its master, Li Taishu was indeed extraordinarily talented. Ranked 5th is Ning Qianqing, an officer of the Border Control Corps. He is 23 years old and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. Yu Qingyan paused and glanced at Ning Qianqing, who was still calm. She wanted to say something but changed to the next one. Ranked 6th is Qi Zhaoxi, the young master of Azura Path. He is 22 years old and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. Sister Yuetong is ranked 7th. The 8th is Zhongli Wuxin, the adopted son of General Chen Songlin, the dean of the Deep Sea Academy. He is the left hand of the young master of Shadow Sect. He is good at defense because of his inheritance. But he is not good at attacking, so he is ranked 9th. All three of them are 20 years old and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. What about the 10th? Li Tianlan waited for a while. Seeing Yu Qingyan was silent, he asked casually. Because two of them are tied for the first place, the top 10 experts are only ranked 9th. There is no 10th. Yu Qingyan chuckled. She hesitated. Then she continued, but if there is another one, Brother Li is the best candidate. Although your realm is a little lower, your combat capability is definitely not worse than that of the top 10 experts. You broke 35 walls in a row. That's awesome. Junior Sister Qingyan, you flatter me. Li Tianlan laughed casually. He was not interested in the ranking. It did not add credits. What was the use of it? Moreover, if it was only the 10th, in his opinion, it was better not to fight for it. It might be a glory for others, but for him, it was nothing to be happy about. I think Qingyan is right. Although your realm is not high with such combat capability, it is natural for you to be ranked among the top 10 experts. In time, you may not be much worse than my brother. Wang Yuetong chuckled softly. She looked at Li Tianlan with her big bright eyes with a trace of strange emotion. Senior brother Tianlan, if you are interested, I would like to introduce you to my brother. You have the same physique. Although my brother is ahead of you for the time being, it will be good for you to communicate with each other. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other subconsciously. Wang Yuetong's attitude toward Li Tianlan seemed to have changed more and more obviously. An absurd attitude rose in their hearts. But the more they thought about it, the more likely it was. Although they did not know the specific origin of Li Tianlan, they were sure that Li Tianlan was definitely not a commoner. He definitely had support behind him. This force might not be comparable to that of the Wang family, but Li Tianlan had the wind and thunder veins. In the future, he would definitely be an invincible realm expert. He was definitely worthy of being roped in by the Wang family. Wang Yuetong's attitude. Did she want to draw Li Tianlan to the Wang family as a son-in-law? This did not seem to be something that they could not figure out. The Wang family had been passed down for hundreds of years and its reputation had never declined. Such a family valued the relationship between young men and women not for true love, but for potential and value. But if Li Tianlan really became the son-in-law of the Wang family, would it be a good thing or a bad thing? Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing frowned and did not speak for a while. In their minds, if Wang Yuetong really had such an idea, Li Tianlan had no room to refuse. Not to mention how grand the Wang family's power was, the charm of Wang Yuetong, the siren of the Wang family, was irresistible. If he had such a girlfriend, he would not only have face but also bring honor to his ancestors. He could even say that he would not have to work hard for a few lifetimes. Your brother can be called the heavenly son of the generation. I can't compare with him. Forget it. Li Tianlan's indifferent voice sounded in her ears. He did not seem to realize anything at all, so he refused indifferently. Well, let's talk about it later. Anyway, there will be plenty of opportunities. Wang Yuetong stared at Li Tianlan for a while with her eyes wide open. Then she smiled sweetly and said no more. Li Tianlan's expression did not change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. After this corner ahead, they should be at the exit of the maze. Wang Yuetong walked beside Li Tianlan, almost touching him. She said with a smile, "Senior brother Tan." The five of them turned the corner. Wang Yuetong's tone suddenly stopped. In their sight, the entrance of the maze appeared in front of them. A group of Sky Academy students in camouflage clothes gathered in front of the few narrow doors that could be used to enter and exit the maze. There was blood at the exit. About 6 or 7 freshmen of the Sky Academy were also lying on the ground. At this moment, in front of the freshmen lying on the ground, several other people were walking over. They took off the wristwatches on their wrists, which were centralized communication, positioning, navigation, calling, scanning, recording, and other functions issued by the Sky Academy. Then they dragged their twitching bodies and directly threw them out of the maze. The wristwatches were finally gathered in the hands of a young man sitting at the centermost door. The man was about 26 or 27 years old. He was tall and sturdy. He sat there casually, but he had an aggressive aura. His appearance could be considered handsome, but his ruthless and cruel temperament destroyed the first impression he gave people. At this moment, he casually took the wristwatches he took from the hands of several freshmen and threw them on the table. His smile was unusually cruel. When Li Tianlan and others walked to the exit, he just glanced at them casually. The moment he saw Wang Yuetong, the young man suddenly froze. He sat up straight subconsciously, and his eyes began to shine. Not only him, but almost all the men blocking the exit stared at Wang Yuetong with greedy faces. Another wave of freshmen. They are not slow, but unfortunately, they are useless. The young man took a deep breath, slowly leaned back in the chair behind him, crossed his legs, and pointed at Li Tianlan with a lazy face. You guys, take off the credit statistical tables on your wrists and give them to me. Then get out of here. Well, the 2 junior sisters come over and let me kiss each of them. Then I will let you pass. How about it? Chapter 20. Domineering, unreasonable, vicious, and cruel. The blood on the ground had not yet dried, and the exit of the maze was filled with a faint smell of blood. The students blocking the entrance glanced at the 5 people who had just arrived at the exit with a grim smile, their eyes constantly changing. When they looked at Li Tianlan, Ning Qianqing, and Li Beidian, they did not hide the ferocity in their eyes at all. But when their eyes fell on Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan, they suddenly became fiery. It could not be said that these students had poor self-control. Yu Qingyan was a little better, but the appearance of Wang Yuetong directly made them lose all resistance. This was truly a little demon. She had stunning facial features, a faintly discernible smile, and an exquisite figure. From head to toe, there was not a single part of her that wasn't beautiful, and there was not a single part that wasn't alluring. Under the stimulation of the fresh blood, all the male students were already in a state of impulsiveness. Suddenly seeing such a seductive beauty that seduced their bones, how could he control himself? Not only them, but also Li Tianlan's heart was boiling at the thought of Wang Yuetong's bright red lips when he heard that she wanted to kiss him. But when he heard the last sentence, he frowned subconsciously. If he dared not stick out his tongue, he would cut off his tongue? Those words were truly disgusting. Therefore, he directly shook his head, looked at the young man who was surrounded by a group of people at the door, and rejected in a clear and calm voice, "No." Not to mention whether Yu Qingyan and Wang Yuetong were willing to go up and be kissed, even if they asked them to take off the credit counting forms and give them to them, Li Tianlan would not agree. The credit counting form was not a form, but the wristwatch on their wrists that had been issued to them since the first day of school. In the next 3 years, this would be one of their most important equipment. The student code of the Sky Academy clearly stipulated that once the wristwatch was lost, they could get a new one, but 50 credits would be deducted. Every new student was given 50 credits, but these credits were related to the basic necessities of life in the first month of school. They had no control over the credits, so if they lost the wristwatch and wanted to replace it, their credits would go into the negatives. This was something that no one was willing to bear. The young man with his legs crossed raised his eyebrows slightly, and his eyes became more and more gloomy. He looked up at Li Tianlan, waved his hand casually, and said with a smile, "You're so confident. What are you waiting for? Go up and take a look. Where did they get their confidence from? Remember, you have to love your junior sisters, and teach those junior brothers who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson." As he spoke, the dozen students who had been surrounding the young man moved their feet. The next second, 10 students rushed toward Li Tianlan at the same time. The young man's behavior seemed no different from that of an ordinary playboy, but when his subordinates moved, it immediately became extremely unusual. The 10 of them moved in unison, and their charging posture was completely identical. Before they even rushed forward, they had already vaguely formed a simple formation. Time was precious in the maneuver. Who had the time to dawdle? Li Tianlan smiled coldly and took a step forward, shielding the other 4 behind him. The human emperor was in his hands. 10 students of the Sky Academy swooped down. 5 meters. 3 meters. Li Tianlan moved forward again. The 10-centimeter-long human emperor was suddenly swung, and the human emperor was directly elongated. However, this time, the bloody spearhead at the front of the human emperor did not extend, so the silver human emperor directly became a long rod about 2 meters long. Li Tianlan held the rod with both hands and smashed it at the head of the nearest student. In the sealed space, there was a sudden wind. The chi-controlling realm became the wind, and the invisible strength roared with the fall of the human emperor, wild and fierce. Chi-controlling realm? Such a fierce chi-controlling realm? The expression of the student who rushed toward Li Tianlan changed greatly. The first thought in his mind was not to attack, but to take the initiative to defend. His hands instinctively crossed in front of his chest, and the terrible power surged in front of him at the moment when his hands were crossed. The moisture in the air instantly condensed in the shock of the power and turned into a shield that could protect his head. He held the shield with both hands, took a standard defensive posture, and raised the shield to meet the silver long rod in Li Tianlan's hand. The raging and roaring strength chi came from far to near, from top to bottom, and as the silver long rod fell, it had completely condensed in front of the long rod in an instant. Crack! In the subtle but horrifying sound, when the silver long rod was half a meter away from the ice shield had been completely torn by the invisible strength chi, and the ice chips were flying. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed, and the human emperor, which weighed more than 50 kilograms, was lifted up. In an instant, most of the force was removed, but the rod still fell on the head of the opponent. Bang! Blood burst out, and the sound of the skull breaking could be heard clearly. The student who rushed to Li Tianlan first did not even have the slightest resistance under the rod. He knelt straight on the ground and passed out on the spot. F***CKU. An almost crazy roar rang out. As soon as the opponent in front of Li Tianlan knelt down, several sharp icicles came from behind and directly covered his upper body. The opponent seemed to have forgotten the rule of no killing in this maneuver. As soon as he made a move, it was a ruthless killing move. Li Tianlan's expression was cold and did not change at all. Around him, the wind whistled. The chi-controlling realm became the wind, and when he moved, the wind moved. He used a spear and a rod, but at this moment, Li Tianlan was surrounded by the pure sword intent, whistling and echoing endlessly. He took a step forward. The air around him twisted wildly with his movements, and countless airflows surrounded him. The icicles whistled to him, but before they hit him, they were chopped into pieces by the sword intent and strength around him. Fast. Each of Li Tianlan's movements was extremely clear, but as fast as lightning. With the wind and thunder veins, he had a much greater advantage than ordinary people in terms of strength and speed. When he took the initiative to attack, his attack was almost unstoppable. Behind the icicles, before the second student who attacked him continued to attack, Li Tianlan had already jumped up and swept his long spear. The strength that seemed to have dissipated just now condensed in front of the human emperor again. One strike. Still one strike. Li Tianlan wantonly waved the human emperor and casually swept it. The rod directly hit the opponent's waist. The second student's body was directly sent flying and smashed on the blue wall 4 or 5 meters away. Boom! Everything at the exit of the maze seemed to be shaking violently. The blue wall, which was extremely tough and could only be broken by a full blow from an expert in the ice-condensing realm, had dense cracks. The body of the student who was swept away by Li Tianlan's rod was embedded in the wall, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The momentum of Li Tianlan's rod was not over. The human emperor tore the air and continued to sweep. His whole body seemed to be driven by the silver rod in his hand, and he directly rushed in the direction of Yu Qingyan. His strides were large, and between the movements, it gave people a sense of suffocating oppression. Bang! The 2-meter-long human emperor arrived in a flash. In front of Yu Qingyan, 2 students were attacking. One of them had just jumped up when he was directly swept in the leg by the rod and was directly sent flying. It was like playing badminton. At that moment, this thought came to the minds of everyone who saw this scene. The freshman holding the silver rod was like holding a racket. With a casual wave, he sent his opponent flying far away. Seeing that his companion was directly sent flying, the other student suddenly dared not to fight anymore. He suddenly exerted his strength and pulled away from Li Tianlan. "Thank you, brother Li." Yu Qingyan smiled sweetly. Li Tianlan shook his head and said, "We're on the same side. Don't mention it." He turned his head and glanced at the battlefield, just in time to see Wang Yuetong, who was nearby, kick out. Wearing delicate canvas shoes, her delicate little foot directly smashed an ice wall in front of her and kicked a student behind the ice wall into the air. At this moment, Wang Yuetong's expression was cold and proud. She was incomparably gorgeous, and her whole body was filled with a kind of awe-inspiring aura. She was cold and arrogant, like a queen. Beside Wang Yuetong, Li Beidian was still laughing and laughing, but there was no opponent in front of him. There was only an ice sword floating beside him. The ice sword kept rising and falling around his bamboo-like figure, and the sword intent was ethereal and distant. Ning Qianqing also stopped fighting. A student was lying in front of him, and the other student who attacked him had escaped to the side and was confronting him from a distance. The whole scene was quiet. There was more blood on the ground again, but this time, it was not the blood of the freshman. 10 elites in the ice-condensing realm rushed up, but in less than half a minute, 8 of them were down. Only 2 could still stand, but they had also lost the courage to continue fighting. The young man sitting in front of the door in the middle stopped laughing. His smile disappeared, and he stared at the 5 freshmen who had given him too much surprise. His expression was cruel, and his eyes were full of anger. This batch of freshmen is really surprising. Before they even entered the school, they had already beaten their seniors to the ground. After a full half a minute of silence, the young man sat up straight and said in a cold tone with a smile, "You're not freshmen?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked. He did not put away the human emperor in his hand, but held it tightly in his hand, ready to fight at any time. "They're the seniors of the last year." Ning Qianqing suddenly walked up and squinted at the young man with a cold expression. He said slowly, "They will also participate in the entrance maneuver, but the task is different from ours, and the credits are also different." "Oh, I was wondering who was so awesome. It turns out that it's Drunbility Ching. Ha, let me introduce him to you. This is Brother Drunbility Ching, one of the top 10 experts of the young generation. His skill of Drunbility is much better than his strength, am I right? Drunbility Ching?" As soon as Ning Qianqing's voice fell, a sharp and mocking voice rang out from the other side. Everyone could hear the sarcasm in the voice. The young man with a cold expression sat motionless. 2 figures who looked about 26 or 27 years old walked up to him and stood on either side of him. They were a man and a woman. The woman had a voluptuous figure. Although she was wearing a camouflage uniform, it was obvious that she had changed it to fully reflect her figure. Her long hair was dyed a bewitching purple, and her face was full of mature charm. She was very attractive. At first glance, her temperament was similar to Wang Yuetong's. However, upon closer inspection, there were some differences. Wang Yuetong was also enchanting and charming, but everyone could feel the pride and reserve under her charming appearance. The woman who appeared at this time, however, had an indescribable coquettish charm. She looked very amorous, but no matter how one looked at her, she seemed a little pretentious. The person who appeared with her was a plain-looking man with a pair of triangular eyes that revealed a trace of wretchedness and viciousness. At this moment he was looking at Ning Qianqing with a cold and twisted smile. Ning Qianqing did not even look at him and continued, "Just now, the headmaster said that every batch of students would stay behind. Some do it to supplement their credits, while some do it to fight for another chance. The former do it out of helplessness, while the latter do it out of unwillingness. They were originally one of the strongest teams in the previous batch, but after graduation, they did not obtain the quota to establish their own force, so they have to start all over again. These senior students' mission is different from ours. They are carrying out a hunting mission, and their targets are the freshmen. They will collect the credits in our hands, and the more they collect, the more credits they will receive. Ning Qianqing paused, sneered, and continued, and if I'm not wrong, it is not just the exit of the maze. When we walk out of the maze, I'm afraid there will be similar hunting teams in the woods outside. The senior students collected the credits of the freshmen to obtain credits. In order not to have their credits deducted, the freshmen would risk their lives to keep their credits. In the Sky Academy, where there was a competitive atmosphere everywhere, such a thing was normal. What about the scores? Li Tianlan asked seriously. Headmaster Zhuang Huayong only recruited the top 50 students who completed the maneuver, but the freshmen and the senior students had different maneuver missions. In this way, the advantage of the senior students who were more familiar with the environment was indeed eliminated. But how were the freshmen and the senior students differentiated among the top 50? It's the same. The hunting mission of the senior students has a number requirement, which can be more, but they also need to complete the maneuver by the pool. After completing the number of kills required by the school, they can go directly to the pool. They have to compete with the freshmen for this ranking. Ning Qianqing shook the wristwatch on his wrist and continued, as for this, if you collect more, you will get extra credits. But if you miss the top 50 because of collecting this, you will only be rewarded with credits, no matter how much you collect, and you will not be assigned to a class. Li Tianlan nodded slightly. Although such a rule could not be said to be absolutely fair, it had achieved the best balance in all aspects. What? Acting tough, Ching? Don't you dare to talk to me? Aren't you good at acting tough? Come on, act tough for everyone to see. How about it? The young man who mocked Ning Qianqing as soon as they met felt that he was ignored, so he became angry from embarrassment and continued to provoke him. Li Tianlan finally turned his head and glanced at him. Then he said impatiently, "Who is that idiot who laughs like a pervert?" Laughing like a pervert? Idiot? The young man with a twisted smile suddenly looked livid. Just a lackey. Ning Qianqing looked disdainful, and his eyes were full of contempt. Do you know them? Li Tianlan looked at Ning Qianqing and asked. They are from the Lu family of Huding, a former giant family with deep roots. Ning Qianqing took a deep breath and nodded. The one in the middle is Lu Dongchao, the eldest grandson of the Lu family, who has entered the fire-flaming realm. The woman is Lu Dongyu, also an expert in the fire-flaming realm. They are brother and sister, and when they work together, they are invincible in the fire-flaming realm. As for the other one, he is Tan Shilai, also an expert in the fire-flaming realm. His father is Tan Qinghua, the deputy commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations in Zhongzhou State. Ning Qianqing looked at the three young men and women gathered at the door and introduced them one by one. Tan Shilai suddenly burst out in anger and sneered. Lackey? Who can make me, Tan Shilai, a lackey? Who deserves it? Dong Chao and I are as close as brothers. Who do you think you are? How dare you judge me? Do you really think that being one of the top 10 experts of the young generation is enough for you to act tough? No matter how powerful you are, you used to be defeated by me. Other than the fact that I can't beat you in acting tough, you're nothing but trash in my eyes. Ning Qianqing, who was humiliated, was not angry at all. He looked at Tan Shilai and said coldly, You did defeat me, but do you want to win again? I can give you a chance here. That's enough. Stop talking. Lu Dongchao suddenly said. Tan Shilai, who was about to accept Ning Qianqing's challenge, snorted with an ugly face and said no more. Lu Dongchao looked thoughtfully at the 5 freshmen in front of him. After a moment of silence, he said slowly, You are not weak. No wonder you are so confident. I can give you a chance. I don't want your credit table and let you go. What do you think? Say it. Li Tianlan said coldly. I can't let you go for hurting my brother. Now, the 5 of you kneel down and join the flames of war. I'll pretend that nothing happened. What do you think? Lu Dongchao looked into Li Tianlan's eyes and said with dignity, "That's good. You are strong enough. You will work for the flames of war from now on. If you perform well, you will be rewarded." Lu Dongyu stood beside her brother with a smile and said in a soft voice, "I know you are all young talents and arrogant. But the situation is stronger than you. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. As long as you kneel down, you can have a bright future. What can't you figure out? Our bright future is earned by ourselves, not by kneeling down. I also have a suggestion. Now you kneel down and I don't want your flames of war. I'll pretend that nothing happened just now. What do you think?" Li Tianlan said coldly. His patience was running out. His impression of the Lu siblings was getting worse. One pretended to be dignified, while the other pretended to be kind. Their hypocrisy made him sick. 3 fire-flaming realm experts wanted the 5 of them to kneel down? Did they think they were in the invincible realm? How dare you insult the descendants of the Lu family? Do you want to die? Lu Dongyu's charming and kind smile slowly disappeared. Her eyes quickly became vicious. She stared at Li Tianlan and said fiercely, "I don't care if you are from the Lu family or the Zhang family. I'll say it again. All of you kneel down and I'll forget about what happened today." Li Tianlan's tone was old-fashioned, but he was getting more and more aggressive. "Bastard, you want to die?" Lu Dongchao suddenly shouted. His body suddenly rose and rushed toward Li Tianlan. The distance of nearly 20 meters did not seem to exist for him. In an instant he was already in front of Li Tianlan and opened his hand to grab Li Tianlan's neck. It was forbidden to kill people in the entrance maneuver. But who could say anything if he disabled Li Tianlan first? Swish! Li Tianlan's face was as cold as ice. He suddenly raised the human emperor in his hand. At the front of the human emperor, the silver spear head directly stuck out. The spear blade expanded to both sides. Li Tianlan held the spear and stabbed forward with indomitable will. Lu Dongchao was startled. He subconsciously stopped and took a step back. He stared at the spear head of the human emperor and narrowed his eyes. He always thought that Li Tianlan's weapon was a long stick. Now that the long stick turned into a long spear, he suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. If he hadn't dodged fast just now, he might have been at a disadvantage now. He was an expert in the fire-flaming realm. Even among the seniors in the last session, he was one of the strongest. If he was at a disadvantage in the hands of a freshman, it would be too shameful. "Son of a bitch, how dare you sneak attack me?" Lu Dongchao sneered. He looked at Li Tianlan and said slowly, "I won't kill you today. I'll take one of your hands first. After the maneuver is over, I'll take your life. I'm not a bitch." Chapter 21. As one of the largest countries in the world, Zhongzhou State had a vast territory and abundant resources. In the hundreds of years since the founding of the country, wealthy families and giant families were not everywhere, but they were not too rare. But in the dark world, the only family that could be called a giant family and could be recognized by everyone was the family that had an invincible being in charge. The Lu family of Huading was a former giant family, which meant that the invincible figure in their family was dead. But this did not mean that the Lu family was desolate. In fact, although the Lu family of Huading was not as glorious as it was in its most glorious period in recent years, it was still an important part of a big force in the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. The unique skills and martial arts of the invincible figure had been passed down. The Lu family might not look as strong as before, but it had passed the difficult period of losing the invincible figure, so its vitality was stronger than before. From Lu Dongchao's point of view, he had nothing to worry about. But having no worries was not what he pursued in this life. What he pursued was to make everyone worry about him. His biggest dream was to become an expert of the invincible realm like his grandfather, to lead the Lu family to the highest point of power in Zhongzhou State again, and to truly stand among the top wealthy families in Zhongzhou State. Lu Dongchao did not like politics, nor did he want to join the army in a generally stable international situation to gain experience. So he finally chose the special warfare system. He had excellent aptitude since he was a child, and there was the inheritance of the invincible figure in his family. Practicing martial arts and fighting in the dark world was the best choice for him. And he was even luckier that he had a like-minded sister, Lu Dongyu, who was equally talented. The brother and sister were very close to each other. They cooperated well with each other since childhood. Once they joined hands, they could even defeat opponents who were much stronger than them across realms. In this way, not only Lu Dongchao saw hope, but also the Lu family saw the hope of restoring the family to its peak state. So the brother and sister were sent to the Sky Academy at the same time. In the second year of the Sky Academy, when they were less than 25 years old, they successfully entered the fire-flaming realm and established the Flames of War. Among the students of the previous Sky Academy, the Flames of War was definitely one of the strongest organizations, and it was also a strong competitor for the quota of only one person in each session. In fact, 3 months before the last batch of students were about to graduate, Lu Dongchao was also one of the top 3 students with the highest credits. He was only 10 points away from each other. However, 1 month before the final maneuver between the 2 academies before graduation, in order to increase his final odds of success, Lu Dongchao led a few elites of the Flames of War to carry out a mission worth 500 credits overseas. The mission was completed smoothly, but Lu Dongchao and Lu Dongyu returned with serious injuries. In the maneuver of the 2 academies that followed, the brother and sister were seriously injured and eliminated halfway. Although they got credits for that mission, they didn't get any credits for the maneuver. This was the graduation maneuver, the maneuver with the most credits awarded. The first place would be awarded 2,000 credits. What did this mean? Lu Dongchao's advantage in credits instantly turned into a disadvantage, and he lost the right to compete for the one and only quota to establish his own force after graduation. Lu Dongchao and his sister were naturally unwilling, and the academy also felt sorry for their misfortune. In the end, under the Lu family's manipulation, Lu Dongchao and his sister stayed in school again. Their credits were reset to 0, and they had to start from scratch. This time, Lu Dongchao was full of confidence. He didn't intend to give anyone the slightest chance, whether it was the seniors or the freshmen. Then, he met Li Tianlan's 5-member squad. To be honest, Lu Dongchao really didn't take these 5 people seriously. Even after they knocked down his 10 subordinates, he still didn't take them seriously. He could see that Li Tianlan was very strong. Li Tianlan should be at the peak of the qi-controlling realm, but he could instantly kill an expert who had just entered the ice-condensing realm. He was indeed a talent, but so what? No matter how strong the qi-controlling realm was, it was still the qi-controlling realm, while he was an expert of the fire-flaming realm. The gap between the realms could not be made up by potential at all. Except for Li Tianlan, the others were also in the ice-condensing realm with amazing potential. However, Lu Dongchao had entered the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. Together with his sister Lu Dongyu, it was a piece of cake for them to suppress these rising stars if they went all out. But he felt that he still cherished talents, so he was willing to give them a chance. As long as they were willing to kneel down to show submission and join the Flames of War, he could let bygones be bygones. After all, talents were rare. But he didn't expect these freshmen to be so ungrateful. Not only did they not kneel down, but they even asked him to kneel to them. It was ridiculous. In Lu Dongchao's view, kissing and kneeling were very normal things. In the Sky Academy, he had seen many beautiful women who were willing to be played by others in order to save 10 credits a month on food and drink. He had also seen many weak people who were willing to knock their foreheads to beg for forgiveness from the strong. In the Sky Academy, the strong should consider their future, while the weak should consider becoming stronger and surviving. In Lu Dongchao's eyes, Li Tianlan and the other 4 were weak people who had the potential to become stronger. So as long as they were willing to be used by him, he was willing to forgive them. But unfortunately, in order to maintain his ridiculous pride and backbone, they chose to refuse. If I can't use them, I might as well just cripple them, lest they have a headache when they grow up. What was more, this guy in front of him had insulted his family. You deserve to die. Lu Dongchao took a deep breath and calmed himself down completely. He stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and said in a cold tone, "My life is here. Come and take it if you can." Li Tianlan's tone was calm and tit for tat. "Very good." Lu Dongchao's tone became more and more dangerous. Facing the silver spear in Li Tianlan's hand, his body was completely relaxed, but his eyes were unprecedentedly focused. Li Tianlan's expression gradually became serious. He was not afraid of a young fire-flaming realm expert with the inheritance of an invincible realm expert, but if he didn't show some trump cards, it would not be easy to win. Lu Dongchao looked at Li Tianlan's serious expression and sneered. His completely relaxed fingers suddenly bent and flicked gently. His fingers flicked in the air, but it was like flicking on a real thing, making a crisp sound. A seemingly weak but extremely hot flame suddenly appeared between his fingers and quickly spread to his whole palm. Gas turned into fire. This was the fire-flaming realm. If the ice-condensing realm was to condense the moisture in the air into hard ice, then the fire-flaming realm was to evaporate all the moisture in the air in an instant. In the extremely dry air, one could use the powerful physical strength and extreme speed to rub the air and ignite a flame in the air. In this realm, an expert in the ice-condensing realm could almost crush him, let alone an expert in the chi-controlling realm. The flame in Lu Dongchao's palm grew more and hotter. The flame gradually changed its state with the flicking of his fingers and finally became a big knife completely condensed by flames. Fire-flaming soldier. Compared with the experts who had just entered the fire-flaming realm, this was obviously a step further and had completely stabilized in the fire-flaming realm. Lu Dongchao looked at Li Tianlan with a mocking expression. But in Li Tianlan's eyes, he could not see any fear or panic. Even the dignified light in his eyes disappeared, leaving only concentration and depth. Lu Dongchao held the fire knife and suddenly looked up. In his sight was the ceiling of the maze, which was nearly 5 or 6 meters high. But at this moment, there was a drop of water falling rapidly above him. In an instant, there was only this drop of water left in Lu Dongchao's pupils. It was pure, transparent, full and smooth in shape, and crystal clear. There was endless awe-inspiring sword intent bursting from the top of his head. In an instant, in the extremely dry air, the water in the maze fell like rain. Ice-condensing realm. And it was the unprecedented ice-condensing realm. In a trance, this realm seemed to have surpassed the ice-condensing realm, but it did not enter the fire-flaming realm. Instead, it went to another unknown path. What kind of monster did I provoke? Lu Dongchao muttered to himself in his heart. Out of the corner of his eye, the silver light had already lit up. Li Tianlan took the initiative to attack. Just now he was in the chi-controlling realm, but now he directly entered the ice-condensing realm without meditation. He lifted the human emperor and smashed it at Lu Dongchao. The air shook fiercely. As the human emperor was raised, the drop of water that had not yet fallen directly condensed along the trajectory of the human emperor. The awe-inspiring sword intent moved in the air, making everyone's expression change completely. Ah ah ah! Lu Dongchao roared with all his might. In an instant, the fire broadsword in his hand completely disintegrated, and a large amount of flames emerged from all over his body. Around the human emperor, countless water droplets that had condensed together fell one by one, smoothly and cheerfully, but each droplet was like a sword, sharp, cold, and fierce. The human emperor came crashing down on the water drops with great force. Lu Dongchao roared wildly, and the flames emerging from his body became denser and denser. But the water drops kept falling, and each drop of water could put out a flame. The flames on Lu Dongchao's body could not rush out, but the water drops falling from the human emperor were endless. Bang! The sound of the weapon hitting the flesh was dull and clear. Lu Dongchao raised his hands high, and the flames all over his body spread wildly. The fire in his hands kept jumping, and he forcibly caught Li Tianlan's spear. Lu Dongchao's body shook violently. Li Tianlan's strength and speed were simply incredible. This was not the strength that someone in the ice-condensing realm should have. He had fought back with all his strength, but at this time, he had a ridiculous feeling that he could not take a second shot from Li Tianlan. A horrible idea rose in his mind. Lu Dongchao's face turned pale and he exclaimed, "Wind and thunder veins. You have wind and thunder veins." Li Tianlan stood steadily in front of Lu Dongchao, holding the spear with one hand and constantly pressing it down. His spear body was gently trembling in a regular pattern, and a large number of water drops continued to gather and whistle toward him along with the slight trembling of the human emperor. There were already countless water balls floating around the human emperor and Li Tianlan. "Now kneel down for me and I can pretend that nothing happened." It was still the same words and the same request. But when Li Tianlan said it just now, everyone felt that he was overestimating himself. But now, Lu Dongchao obviously hadn't lost yet, but Li Tianlan's words gave others an irresistible majesty when they heard it. "Big brother." Lu Dongyu, who had been watching the battle, finally reacted. She screamed and rushed directly to Li Tianlan. The unprecedented ice-condensing realm, the once-in-a-century wind and thunder veins, the freshman in front of her was too strange. She felt that it was necessary to join hands with her big brother to deal with him. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as Lu Dongyu took a step forward, the sound of water suddenly sounded beside her. A few ice walls abruptly appeared beside her, completely blocking her path. An ice sword condensed from water floated around Li Beiyin. Within the ice wall that trapped Lu Dongyu, the sword intent gradually turned from vague to clear. Li Beiyin, who was as thin as a bamboo pole and looked so weak that everyone ignored him, took a step forward and said loudly, "Li Taishu, the great void sword master of Mount Shu, is willing to learn the unique skill of the Lu family." As he spoke, the ice wall that trapped Lu Dongyu instantly shattered. Countless ice swords directly enveloped Lu Dongyu's entire body. There was a fire burning on Lu Dongyu's body. Countless ice swords instantly disappeared in the fire, but the cold sword energy was still flying around her body. A large number of ice swords disappeared from existence, as if merging into the void. This was the unique skill of Mount Shu. Chapter 22. Great Void Sword Master, Li Taishu. The expressions of everyone in the flames of war changed. Although this name was in the list of the top 10 young experts, the value of this name itself was much higher than that of the top 10 experts. How convincing could a list of the top 10 experts, which was ranked every year, be? But for hundreds of years, Great Void Sword Master of Mount Shu had become an expert of the invincible realm, which was more convincing than any list. Lu Dongchao was vaguely suppressed. Lu Dongyu was trapped by Li Taishu. It seemed that Tan Shilai was the only one in the entire flames of war who could contribute and be of great help. Tan Shilai hesitated slightly. The freshmen in front of him were beyond his expectation. His intuition told him that he'd better not provoke them. But as the third in command of the flames of war, how could he keep a foothold in the Sky Academy in the future if he fled at this time? He gritted his teeth and took a sudden step forward with flames flashing around him. One step before, it was midsummer. One step after, it was cold winter. The dense ice sword seemed to have been waiting for Tan Shilai's action. Before his feet touched the ground, at least hundreds of ice swords had lined up in a seemingly mysterious formation and rushed toward him. It was one of the three most basic and esoteric sword movements in Jade Pool. Prairie Fire Sword Storm. The dense ice swords crazily attacked the flames around Tan Shilai. The sword rain was like ice, but the sword momentum was like fire, never stopping. Ning Qianqing's tone was cold and fierce. "If you dare to move again, I'll stay here with you today until I die." "Help! Are you all dead?" Tan Shilai, who was trapped in the sword rain, was exasperated. He ignored Ning Qianqing and suddenly roared at the members of the Flames of War who were watching the show. The elites of the Flames of War standing stupidly outside the battlefield were all stunned. More than half of them subconsciously wanted to help. Wang Yuetong from the Wang family of Beihai is willing to compete with senior brothers. Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes and took a step forward, smiling innocently. As soon as she said that, not only the elites of the Flames of War turned pale, but also the faces of the three experts of the fire-flaming realm on the battlefield suddenly changed. The Wang family of Beihai. Only those who really came into contact with the upper class of Zhongzhou State knew what these 4 words meant. There were quite a few wealthy families in Zhongzhou State, and the Lu family in Huading was one of them. But compared with the Wang family of Beihai, to put it bluntly, the current Lu family was only qualified to carry shoes for the Wang family at most. Even when the invincible realm expert of the Lu family was alive, he was far inferior to the Wang family. Zhongzhou State had been founded for hundreds of years. The Wang family had only been glorious for a few hundred years. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a family? He had always heard that Princess Yuetong, the demoness of the Wang family, was in Beihai province. Why did she suddenly come to the Sky Academy? Wasn't this King scam? Everyone from the flames of war froze on the spot. No one dared to move. Lu Dongchao was depressed, but he kept the flame on his body. The water balls around him were still floating, and the water drops were like swords, falling endlessly. Such an incredible ice-condensing realm made him feel hopeless. Right now, he really needed help, but he also understood that his subordinates wouldn't be able to help. The Lu family was an important part of another superpower in Zhongzhou State. As the core of the younger generation of the Lu family, he was not afraid of the Wang family. But how could his subordinates dare to make a move under the Wang family's name? On the other side, the sword energy around Lu Dongyu was flying faster and faster. All the ice swords seemed to be in a state of illusory and real. They were ethereal and came and went like the wind. The moment Wang Yuetong spoke, Lu Dongyu was directly shocked by the 4 words, Wang family of Beihai. Li Beidian seized the opportunity, and countless seemingly illusory ice swords directly cut numerous wounds of different depths on her body. Dongyu! Lu Dongchao was anxious, and the flame around him suddenly shook slightly. Several raindrops suddenly passed through the flame and fell on him. Water was the softest thing, but at this time, it was like the sharpest blade. A few drops of water fell on Lu Dongchao's arm, and suddenly his whole arm was penetrated, dripping with blood. Still not willing to kneel down and admit defeat? Li Tianlan looked at Lu Dongchao coldly. He was still holding the spear down with one hand, while Lu Dongchao was still holding the human emperor with both hands. For the time being, Lu Dongchao couldn't lift it up, and Li Tianlan couldn't press it down either. They seemed to be in a confrontation. But Li Tianlan, who had the wind and thunder veins, had almost endless physical strength. How long could Lu Dongchao hold on? Admit defeat? Dream on? Lu Dongchao gritted his teeth and roared. The raindrops fell on his arm. Under the sharp pain, he subconsciously loosened the hand holding the human emperor. Supported by one hand, Li Tianlan kept exerting force, and Lu Dongchao's whole body bent. Really? Li Tianlan asked coldly. The human emperor trembled slightly, and the water ball floating around him shook slightly. Another drop of rain fell from the ceiling. Then, more and more raindrops fell from the ceiling. This time, the water drops were no longer round. Each drop of water became the shape of a sword, delicate, sharp, with indescribable elegance and the breath of death. Sword rain. This is the sword rain, the real sword rain. Wang Yuetong's eyes were fanatical. Looking at the falling raindrops, she kept muttering to herself. Brother Li is so powerful. Yu Qingyan was also fascinated. She glanced at Wang Yuetong and whispered, Sister Yuetong, what realm is Brother Li in now? Is it condensing ice? Or is it flaming fire? Is he hiding his strength? Wang Yuetong thought for a while and whispered with some uncertainty, his real realm should still be the chi-controlling realm, but he should have entered the ice-condensing realm, or even a higher realm. He just fell and recultivated again. He has been to that realm, so it's completely possible to temporarily forcibly improve himself to that state. It's okay to do it once or twice, but if it happens too often, it will affect his foundation, and he has no hope of reaching the invincible realm. Recultivation? Yu Qingyan's eyes were full of little stars, and she felt dizzy. Why would anyone choose to recultivate? Maybe it's because he had to? It's possible that he was possessed by the devil, or his martial arts were destroyed. Only recultivation can explain the fact that once he enters a new realm, He is in the peak state. Well, some special medicine can also achieve this effect, but he didn't take it. Moreover, his fighting style in the ice-condensing realm is obviously rich in experience, which can only be explained by him having been in this realm. Wang Yuetong chuckled, looked at Li Tianlan's back, and murmured to herself, "Qing'an, I think I'm in love. I'll ask you one last time. Are you willing to kneel down?" The rain of swords fell on Li Tianlan's head, flying around him. Li Tianlan frowned, looked at Lu Dongchao in front of him, and said in an increasingly calm tone, "In your dreams." Lu Dongchao's eyes were extremely solemn, and he gnashed his teeth. Failure. This word came to his mind again. What was the consequence of failure? Lu Dongchao dared not think about it, but he had to think about it. Once he failed, this maneuver would be a mess, the morale of the flames of war would be scattered, and they might even face the risk of disbanding. His years of effort would be ruined in the hands of the freshmen in front of him. How could he accept such a result? In any case, he could not accept it. A fire-flaming realm expert lost to an ice-condensing realm expert. Why did this happen? His breathing became heavier and heavier, and his eyes gradually became blood-red. Li Tianlan looked at him quietly, and suddenly narrowed his eyes and smiled. "You can't do it more than 3 times. I've asked you one last time, and I'm very happy. Your answer is exactly what I want." Boom! All the water balls floating around him suddenly exploded. The water swords above his head also fell. "Go to hell!" Lu Dongchao roared with all his strength, and there were large patches of fire rising from his body. In an instant, he had tried his best to stand up under the suppression of Human Emperor. He did stand up. But he didn't stand up, but flew up. As he exerted his strength upward, Li Tianlan did the same. Li Tianlan exerted strength in his arms and directly lifted Lu Dongchao up with a spear. Lu Dongchao's body hung on the head of Human Emperor's spear, and he felt unprecedented humiliation. A large number of water droplets and rain swords crazily hit his body. The fire around him was getting weaker and weaker, and in the blink of an eye, he was already covered with blood. "Brother!" Under the great void sword intent, Lu Dongyu screamed in despair. But Lu Dongchao did not respond, and he was completely disheartened. Li Tianlan lifted Lu Dongchao, narrowed his eyes, and chuckled. "How do you feel? If you can survive, you can be an ordinary person in the future." A large number of water droplets suddenly shook, and in an instant, all the water droplets turned into sword rain, rushing toward Lu Dongchao. The sword intent rushed into the sky like a torrent. "Student, please show mercy." An impatient voice filled with ice-cold anger and killing intent rang out. Li Tianlan only felt that Human Emperor became lighter, and the next second, Lu Dongchao, who was on the spearhead, had been held in the arms of a figure who suddenly appeared. The torrent-like sword rain hit the figure who suddenly appeared, bringing with it a large number of flickering fire. The fire was dissipating. The sword rain was evaporating. The fire rose and extinguished at will. An expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. For the first time, Li Tianlan's cold or gentle eyes showed a trace of naked and undisguised killing intent. The Human Emperor trembled slightly in his hand, and a large number of sword rain swirled around his body like a crystal-clear belt of light. "Who are you?" His voice was cold, but the fighting intent in his eyes was completely burning. "I'm Lu Xiuwei, the Deputy Director of the Teaching Office of the Sky Academy." Lu Xiuwei held Lu Dongchao's body and quickly checked his injuries. A cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes, and then he looked at Li Tianlan and said with a fake smile. He looked about 50 years old, short, thin, and slightly bald. His personal image could be described as a mess, but when he stood there casually, there was a kind of momentum that no one could ignore. "What's your relationship with Lu Dongchao?" Li Tianlan took a deep breath, and his killing intent seemed to be completely restrained. But at this moment, he gave people a more dangerous feeling than when he was full of killing intent. "This is my nephew, classmate. You hurt Dongchao like this. In any case, you must give me an explanation." Lu Xiuwei was still smiling, but his smile gradually became cold. "I can't kill people in the maneuver. Except that I can't kill people, everything I do is right. Director Lu, your nephew is not dead. What explanation do you want? Li Tianlan asked lightly. I'm here today, not as the deputy director of the teaching office, and I don't care about your maneuver. I'm Lu Dongchao's uncle, and I want an explanation from you as his uncle. What can you do? Lu Xiaowei said with a gloomy look. A wave of hostility suddenly rose from the depths of Li Tianlan's heart. He narrowed his eyes and sneered. You mean that you don't need to give us an explanation when Lu Dongchao robbed us of the credit counting table, and you don't need to give us an explanation when he ordered his men to attack us. But now that I hurt him, I need to give you an explanation? That's the content of the maneuver, and it has nothing to do with me. What explanation do I need to give you? Lu Xiaowei waved his hand and said expressionlessly. Good, very good. Li Tianlan was so angry that he laughed. He hurt us, and that's the content of the maneuver. I hurt him, so I need to give you an explanation. The Sky Academy has such a deputy director, and it's a disgrace to the entire academy. I've said that I'm not standing in front of you as the deputy director, but as Dongchao's uncle. I want an explanation from you. Classmate, if you don't give it, don't blame me for taking it myself. Lu Xiaowei sneered and stared at Li Tianlan with undisguised killing intent. What explanation do you want? Li Tianlan looked at Lu Xiaowei, and his tone became calm again. Lu Xiaowei made it clear that he was shameless to the end and unreasonable because of his strength. It was useless for him to say anything more. The silver spear in your hand is destined to be my nephew Dongchao's. Why don't you give it to me as compensation? Besides, you can cut off one of your arms and I'll let it go. Of course, if Dongchao wants to take revenge on you in the future, it's your personal grudge, and it has nothing to do with me. What do you think, classmate? Lu Xiaowei's face softened, and he said with a smile. In the face of such a shameless person, Li Tianlan was not even interested in being angry. Without raising his eyelids, he said loudly, I refuse. Classmate, I have to remind you that young people who don't know when to stop will eventually die a terrible death. Lu Xiaowei laughed, and his eyes became more and more greedy as he stared at the silver spear. Now that it's come to this, I can only move forward. Whoever asks me to retreat, I'll kill him. The silver spear in Li Tianlan's hand shook, and he said gently, including the deputy director of the Sky Academy. Boy, you're courting death by insulting the deputy director of the Sky Academy. Lu Xiaowei flew into a rage. He raised his hands, handed Lu Dongchao's body to a member of the Flames of War, and directly rushed toward Li Tianlan. At the exit of the maze. In an instant, the fire became brighter and hotter than ever. Lu Xiaowei seemed to have turned into a huge fireball. In the air, he swooped down toward Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan raised his human emperor, and his pupils reflecting the fire were dead silent. The sword rain, which was like a belt of light around him, rushed toward Lu Xiaowei without reservation. In the increasingly hot and dry air, there were still drops of water falling from the ceiling. The water was endless, and the cold light was shining. Chapter 23. The fire did not go out. The water kept dripping. The space at the exit of the maze became hot and humid. With Lu Xiaowei as the center, the fire from all directions gathered toward him and then tried to expand. Meanwhile, the rain of swords continued to rain down on the light screen formed by the flames. The sword chi was awe-inspiring and seemed to be endless. It was like a belt of light, like a swimming dragon, like a torrent. Fire and sword rain were everywhere. The fire was roaring, the sword rain was humming, and the water and fire were opposing each other, forming an extremely gorgeous picture. Each of the 4 realms of martial arts was divided into 3 stages: the initial stage, the stabilization stage, and the peak stage that was about to break through. Lu Xiaowei was at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Even among the experts of the same realm as him, he was one of the best. It was impossible for a person with average combat strength to be the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. Lu Xiaowei and his nephew Lu Dongchao were both at the fire-flaming realm, but the stabilization stage and the peak stage were two completely different concepts. The further one went in the cultivation of martial arts, the greater the gap would be. It was beyond everyone's expectation that Li Tianlan could defeat Lu Dongxiao. But now, he was not at a disadvantage in the face of Lu Xiuwei, which made everyone feel complicated. Even Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing got rid of their opponents and stood in front of Wang Yuetong, watching the battle in front of them with solemn expressions. This is bad. I'm afraid Tianlan is no match for this old guy. Ning Qianxing stared at the battlefield of water and fire and said in a low voice. Then stop talking nonsense. Go and help. Li Beidian raised the ice sword in his hand again and said without hesitation. Help? You'll have to get through me first. Lu Dongyu took a step forward and stared at Li Beidian in a resentful tone. The great void sword intent was unpredictable. In the short fight with Li Taishu, she did not suffer a big loss because of her high realm, but she was embarrassed by countless sword energy. Her carefully modified camouflage clothes were cut one after another, and her snow-white skin was dripping with blood. Although it did not affect her appearance much, it was a great shame for Lu Dongyu. As she spoke, Tan Shilai stood beside Lu Dongyu without hesitation, and then the rest of the people of the Flames of War took a step forward at the same time. It was like a repeat of what had happened a few minutes ago. At that time, it was Li Beidian and the others who stopped Lu Dongyu from saving Lu Dongxiao. But now, it was Lu Dongyu and the others who stopped Li Beidian from helping Li Tianlan. Li Beidian narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have turned into a sharp sword, sharp and threatening. Don't worry about me. Around him, the dense rain of swords fell faster and faster, hitting the curtain of fire in front of Lu Xiuwei. But the fire around Lu Xiuwei was getting stronger and stronger. Before the rain of swords could get close to the fire, they were completely evaporated. But Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. You guys find a chance to leave first. This old guy can't keep me. Young man, you're quite arrogant. Since that's the case, I'll give you something fun. Lu Xiuwei grinned hideously and took a step forward. The fire around him suddenly shook violently and then spread. The fire around Lu Xiuwei was weak, but the temperature was getting hotter. The rain of swords could not touch him, but the spreading fire turned into 4 streams of fire and rushed toward Li Tianlan. The unique skill of the Lu family. Shaking all directions. Lu Tianqing, an expert of the invincible realm of the Lu family, could be said to be the representative of late bloomers in martial arts. Lu Tianqing was not talented and barely entered the fire-flaming realm at the age of 35. But after entering the fire-flaming realm, he seemed to be suddenly enlightened and made rapid progress. 2 years later, he entered the thunder-shocking realm. At the age of 42, he had become an expert of the invincible realm. Although Lu Tianqing had been dead for only 10 years, some of his unique skills were still famous. Shaking all directions was one of the unique skills that made Lu Tianqing famous. For streams of fire surged and the air became blurred and twisted under the high temperature. Lu Xiuwei was full of killing intent and rushed toward Li Tianlan along with the 4 streams of fire. The streams of fire rushed toward him. The moisture in the air seemed to have evaporated completely. The rain of swords around Li Tianlan was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye, but his eyes were still calm. The human emperor was shaking violently. The rain of swords fought against the streams of fire around him. Lu Xiuwei, who was still surrounded by flames, strode toward Li Tianlan. 5 meters. 3 meters. Li Tianlan suddenly moved forward. The violently shaking human emperor pierced Lu Xiuwei's chest like a silver lightning. There was a sudden chill in the hot air. The rain of swords turned into ice and quickly gathered around Li Tianlan. In less than a second, Li Tianlan seemed to be covered with a thin layer of ice. The endless rain of swords disappeared in an instant. In an instant, there was only silver light in the raging fire. The whistling energy mixed with broken ice appeared. The stream of fire in front of Li Tianlan was directly blown aside, but the silver spear was still moving forward, riding the wind, breaking ice, and extinguishing the fire. Wherever the silver spear went, there was nothing it could not break. Bang! The rapidly moving human emperor was tightly held by a skinny hand. Lu Xiaowei appeared in front of Li Tianlan and sneered. The wind and thunder veins are really terrifying. But your realm is too low. It's not interesting. His hands were surrounded by flames, and the hot temperature was directly transmitted to Li Tianlan's hands through the metal body of the human emperor. Give it to me! Lu Xiaowei suddenly shouted and raised his hands. The 50-kilogram human emperor was lifted up by him. Li Tianlan, who was holding the human emperor, was also lifted up by him. The unique skill of the Lu family. Resisting the cauldron. He concentrated all his energy in his limbs and burst out the most terrifying power in the shortest time. He could carry a 500-kilogram cauldron, let alone the 100-kilogram human emperor. Lu Xiaowei held one end of the spearhead with both hands and directly lifted Li Tianlan above his head. The flames spread up along the spear and reached Li Tianlan's hands in the blink of an eye. Li Tianlan gathered water drops in his hands and barely blocked the flames. But the other 3 streams of fire were still hitting his back, trying to completely swallow the thin ice on his body. With Lu Xiaowei's current realm, when the thin ice on his body broke, he would die. Such a terrible temperature was enough to completely burn his body into ashes in a second. This old dog not only wanted to take the human emperor, but also wanted to kill people. As the deputy director of the Sky Academy, where did he get the courage to kill a student of the Sky Academy in the entrance maneuver? Let go of me. Lu Xiaowei smiled cruelly and looked at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at a dead man. He held the human emperor and kept shaking his hands. The terrible power directly passed through the spear to Li Tianlan's body. Blood flowed down from the corner of Li Tianlan's mouth and fell on his hands, dyeing the spear red. Tianlan. Li Baitian's expression changed, and the sword intent flashed in his eyes. This can't go on. Senior brother Tianlan doesn't seem to have any decent unique skill. He is only relying on his own strength and realm. He can't hold on any longer. Wang Yuetong frowned and said, the so-called unique skill, to put it bluntly, was the most thorough use of one's own strength and combat capability. To be exact, it was similar to unique skills. When there was a big gap between the two sides, the strength would naturally crush everything. But if the two sides were on par, the one who mastered the more powerful unique skill would be the final winner. Lu Xiaowei's unique skill was taught by Lu Tianqing, an expert of the invincible realm. But now Li Tianlan was relying on brute force. There was no doubt that he would win or lose. If he continued to hold on, it was a question whether he could survive. Swish! Before Wang Yuetong's voice died away, Ning Qianqing had already taken a sudden step forward. Countless ice swords surrounded him and flattened out in a second. The ice swords were cold and the sword intent was like fire. Prairie fire sword storm. Countless ice swords rushed toward Lu Xiaowei, but were stopped by Tan Shilai. Ning Qianqing looked indifferent. Without retreating, he rushed toward Tan Shilai at full speed. His eyes seemed to be burning at this moment. Every move he made showed his determination at all costs. He was an officer of the Border Control Corps. He came to the Sky Academy in the name of learning, but his code name was Man of Sacrifice. He was not afraid of death. So what was there for him to be afraid of? Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sword intent in Li Baitian's eyes seemed to have completely condensed into a substance. The exquisite ice swords around him stopped and trembled slightly in front of him. Countless erratic sword intents quickly gathered together, and the ice swords gradually turned from crystal clear to lustrous white. The surging coldness continued to concentrate on the ice swords in front of Li Baitian. The aura of the exquisite ice swords grew sharper and sharper, and Li Baitian's momentum kept rising. His swords grew whiter and whiter. His face grew paler and paler. Blood flowed down from Li Baitian's eyes, but he didn't feel it. He just stared at Lu Dongyu, who looked terrible in front of him, and said calmly, "Get out of my way." This sword strike was really a fight to the death. Everyone could see that Li Baitian was still unable to completely control this sword, but he still used it in a situation where he could not. This was enough to show his determination to fight with his life on the line. Ning Qianqing was fighting desperately. So was Li Baitian. All for Li Tianlan. The exquisite ice swords in front of him grew whiter and whiter. As the coldness gathered, it seemed to have begun to bloom a pure milky white light. The second move of Great Void Sword. All swords in one. At this moment, even Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan's blood was boiling. They took a step forward at the same time. Yu Qingyan stretched out her white and tender hands. The color of her palms changed, and a thin layer of ice condensed in her hands. Under the thin layer of ice, her palms had become a strange cyan color. Wang Yuetong was silent, but her body was surrounded by frost. Behind her, a huge sword 1/2 meter wide and 2 or 3 meters long was also taking shape. Ice and fire, the huge sword and the girl. At this moment, Wang Yuetong's ponytail directly flew up, and her long black hair fluttered behind her. Princess Yuetong, who had always given people a sense of enchantment, looked indescribably domineering and powerful with the huge sword behind her, full of the demeanor of a king. Little guys are very loyal. Since you don't want to leave, then don't leave. When I get rid of this guy, none of you can escape. Lu Xiaowei cackled and looked at Li Tianlong, who held the human emperor tightly, with an extremely vicious look in his eyes. Baiyan, you go first. I have a way to get out. Trust me this once. Li Tianlong was still held up in the air by Lu Xiaowei. The tremendous force hit him again and again. His injuries were getting more and more serious, but his tone was still calm as a glacier that never melted. Li Baitian's eyebrows moved, but his face was expressionless. Why did you team up with me if you don't trust me? Li Tianlong frowned, and his tone was a little hurried. If you want to leave, we'll leave together. It has nothing to do with whether you trust me or not. Give me a minute, and I'll go help you after I get rid of this woman. Li Baitian's tone was calm. Together. Li Tianlong gently raised the corner of his mouth, looked at Lu Xiaowei with undisguised killing intent in his eyes, and said, "Okay, let's go together." He held the human emperor with both hands, and all his joints shook at the same time. At this moment, the innate divine power given to him by the thunder vein burst out without reservation. He stabbed the spear straight down. Lu Xiaowei frowned, and his hand holding the spear slipped a little, and the spear tip suddenly moved a few centimeters toward his abdomen. The sharp strength qi almost pierced through his skin, causing his entire abdomen to feel a burning pain. Lu Xiaowei's expression did not change, and he snorted coldly. He put more force in his palm, trying to push the human emperor back. As soon as he put more force, Lu Xiaowei was shocked, because Li Tianlong did not resist at all on the other end of the silver spear, and directly flew backward with his force. The spear head suddenly shrank in a violent tremor, and the silver spear was shortening. As Li Tianlong withdrew the spear blades on both sides slid directly to his palm. Despicable boy! Lu Xiaowei shouted angrily, and subconsciously loosened his palm. Li Tianlong was in the air, rising higher and higher with the force of Lu Xiaowei's push. The human emperor stretched again in the air, and he held the spear in his hand, breaking the wall with one thrust. Without any suspense, a big hole was broken in the ceiling. Li Tianlong's figure directly rushed out of the hole, and instantly disappeared. Want to leave? Stay here. Lu Xiaowei's face turned red. With his strength in the fire-flaming realm, he let a boy in the ice-condensing realm escape. It was ridiculous. Flames spread out from his body, and a large number of falling black bricks were directly burned to ashes in the flames. He also rushed out of the hole, chasing after Li Tianlong, and disappeared. Go after him. Li Baiyan was stunned for a moment, and then he jumped and directly chased after him. But in a few seconds, Li Tianlong and Lu Xiaowei, one running and the other chasing, were nowhere to be seen. East. Li Baiyan thought for a moment and said decisively. Out of the maze, all the way to the east, they could reach the end of the maneuver. In Li Baitian's view, since Li Tianlong was no match for Lu Xiaowei, he must go all the way to the east. As long as he reached the end, with the protection of the headmaster, Lu Xiaowei could do nothing to him. The others nodded and quickly went east. But in fact, Li Tianlong went all the way to the north. He seemed to be easy to talk to, but if someone really provoked him, he would be more vengeful than anyone else. The shamelessness and arrogance of the Lu family had completely infuriated him, and it was obvious that they wanted to kill him. In any case, he had to teach the whole Lu family a lesson. You don't let me live well. I'll let you die a horrible death. Li Tianlan was extremely fast. He rushed out of the maze and disappeared in the woods in a flash. Lu Xiuwei, who followed him closely, could only see a vague shadow. Lu Xiuwei sneered and followed him without hesitation, with the same determination to kill. Li Tianlan was one of the most outstanding freshmen in recent years. Since he had provoked him, if he was not completely killed today, the whole Lu family would not have peace in the future. He had to kill him. The two rushed into the woods one after the other, going deeper and deeper in the woods. 500 meters. 1,000 meters. 2,000 meters. Lu Xiuwei, who had been following Li Tianlan closely, suddenly stopped. He furrowed his brows and turned his skinny and short body, looking around vigilantly. He was here. 1 second ago, he could still feel that Li Tianlan was here, but the next second, Li Tianlan seemed to have disappeared. Lu Xiuwei frowned and looked around. There was no one in the east. There was no one in the west. There was no one in the north. There was no one in the south. Lu Xiuwei turned his head, and his pupils suddenly contracted. In his sight, on a thick tree less than 20 meters away from him, Li Tianlan was standing there quietly, holding the human emperor in his hand and looking down at him condescendingly, as if he was looking at a dead man. Lu Xiuwei's heart sank for no reason, and it directly sank to the bottom. Li Tianlan was just a nonentity who had not entered the fire-flaming realm, but his fearless attitude made Lu Xiuwei feel extremely uneasy. He took a deep breath, looked at Li Tianlan, and reached out to him, saying slowly, "Give me your weapon and break one of your arms, and I will let you go today. What do you think?" Li Tianlan's mouth curled up into a meaningful smile. He narrowed his eyes, looked at Lu Xiuwei, and said with a smile, "You kill yourself now, and I will let the Lu family go in the future. What do you think? Arrogant boy. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Lu Xiuwei flew into a rage and was about to pounce on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan laughed and said in a cold tone, "Fulfill my wish? You had enough fun in the maze, and now it's my turn." He suddenly stamped on the trunk with one foot, and all the nearby trees seemed to shake violently. In Lu Xiuwei's suddenly contracted pupils, countless trees shook at the same time, and thousands of leaves fell from the treetops, rushing toward him. The whole forest seemed to be filled with sword energy. It was sharp, cold, and ruthless. Tens of thousands of leaves fluttered majestically, completely enveloping the entire forest and blocking out the sun. Lu Xiuwei was surrounded by flames, and he attacked with all his strength. A staircase of ice condensed by water vapor suddenly appeared in front of Lu Xiuwei. Before he could react, a silver spear suddenly appeared and pierced his head. There was no sign, and there was no way to guard against it. Lu Xiuwei instinctively took a big step back, looking terrified. Li Tianlan seemed to cross a distance of more than 10 meters with one step, and stood on the ice staircase in the air. The silver spear, with the light of death, was elegant and charming. "You deserve to die," Li Tianlan said with a smile, and suddenly raised the human emperor. In the forest, leaves fluttered like rain, whistling back and forth, covering the sky and the sun, blocking all the outside world sight. Lu Xiuwei stared at Li Tianlan with a pale face, and said nothing. At that moment, as Li Tianlan raised the silver spear, ice staircases appeared everywhere within dozens of meters around the two of them. Li Tianlan's figure was like a ghost, constantly moving on the surrounding ice staircases. For a moment, Lu Xiuwei seemed to be surrounded by Li Tianlan. He was everywhere. A 5,000-word chapter. Is it big? The new book released on the 2nd, today is the 11th. 9 days, 100,000 words. It shouldn't be slow. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.